Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Good afternoon, everyone. We have our council here gathered in the chambers at noon today, along with many members of our staff. Many of the senior managers are with us, as well as other manager levels. Council, we are going to commence with our special council meeting, which is budget meeting number 3. And this meeting is a special council meeting. We do have a couple of important items to get to, including council input towards the budget. So we'll move ahead with our regular agenda, and that is a recommendation be it resolved that council of the township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda for the special council meeting, budget meeting number 3, dated December the 4th, 2024, as presented. Can I get the mover and seconder? Councillor Deneen, Councillor Walker, thank you. Any questions on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor? The agenda carries unanimous. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Remember, this is a omnibus discussion, omnibus bill in regards to all of our township, and as we're all citizens, this is relevant to all of us. If anything comes up, though, directly as far as a declaration, please bring it forward. We'll deal with it at the time. So, Council, we will move to item number 3, which is our budget reports and motions. The first item is an update from our treasurer, Kelly McDonald, and I know that our CAO is also standing by. Kelly's going to come right forward here to talk to us because she's got so much information to talk to us about that we're going to give her her own podium and everything today. She's going to try out the new microphone, see if it works. Let's see if it works.
Testing.
Oh my goodness, would you look at that? The new microphone works. Thank you so much to our technical support people who have, we've had some issues with that microphone, as you know, so I'm glad to see we've got a new one in there finally. Kelly McDonald, our treasurer, I'll leave the next portion of the meeting up to you. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Worship, members of council. What I've got planned for you today is a brief recap of where we ended up at our last meeting. Then I'm going to give you a couple of updates that we've received. So the county rate came in, our growth came in, and the OPP announcement came in. So we get to the end of the slide and it'll give you a complete picture of where we stand right now. I've provided you with updated capital sheets because there's been some discussion back and forth about capital projects that are related to grants or growth. So the ones you have on your sheets that are kind of highlighted in the purple, those projects are not going to go forward if either the grant money doesn't come forward or growth does not come forward. So just so you're clear, they're on the capital budget because if another grant opportunity comes up, they have to have been an approved project by council and shovel ready. However, having said that,
all right.
First slide, Krista. So you've seen this slide before. I like to show it just as a reminder of what growth actually is. It has nothing to do with the assessments or the reassessments that MPAC has not done. What it has to do is the difference between a property being a vacant piece of property and at the end of the year, there's actually a house there. So when I talk about growth, that's where the growth is coming. It's an actual new residential unit on what was previously a vacant piece of property. So what's happened with our growth, our original budget, I open up at around $100,000 because we really never know until the end of the year how much of those new homes are going to be picked up by MPAC and actually put on our rolls. This year, we got $652,834 worth of growth in actual tax dollars, which is fantastic. It's up from last year, which was roughly around $572,000. So very pleased with that number. Next slide, please. And again, this is just the recap of what you were presented to through the senior management team. Thank you for holding up my end of the not being here. So that's our net operating budget from taxation was originally $18,952,698. Next slide, please. The capital budget, and again, these are what you have in front of you, the lines that are under the funded through taxation. These are the amounts that we're talking about. So it's a total of a 2.781 capital budget. Next slide. So this is the total taxation funded proposed budget for 2025, and we're sitting at 21.7 million. Next slide. So when we last spoke on November 20th, we were at a blended rate of 7.06%. Now, as I mentioned, the county came in slightly under what we'd expected. They came in at 3.625. Our growth came in a lot higher than we had expected, which again was nice. So next slide, please. As of today, we were at 5.48%. And then we received the letter from the province letting us know that they were going to be covering off a large chunk of our OPP. Next slide. So back on November 20th, it would have been 213, or sorry, on December today, before the OPP statement came through, it would have been $213.80 for an average priced home in Clearview of $315,000. Next slide, please. So after the OPP announcement, that brought our average tax rate, or gross or net tax increase rather, down to 5.24%, which is where we sit right now. Next slide, please. So what that does is it drops it down to $204.57, and that's a total increase for the year for someone whose property is assessed at $315,000. Which is currently the average for Clearview. I believe it works out to be about $69 per $100,000 worth of assessed value. So that is it. It's back in your hands. You've got all the senior managers here to answer any questions you've got. I will go back to my my laptop so that I can be doing calculations on the fly. But if you have any opening questions, please, I am here.
All right, well, thank you very much. And it is obviously good news that we got late last week about the OPP funding. And we talked about that on Monday briefly at our council meeting. But glad to see how the numbers actually flush out when we look at the overall tax increase. And I'm grateful for your work and your team, and also the work of all of our senior managers at this point. So before we go to questions from the floor here, I would wonder if the CAO, did you have anything you'd like to add to the discussion before we go to questions, Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just Kelly, at the start of her presentation, spoke about growth and how that really is about new homes. So the impact for an assessment for growth doesn't mean the assessments are going to go up for the houses that are existing in the community. The other part of that, and many people would understand this, but for the folks that don't, assessment growth can be the value of your properties increasing. As we stated, the assessments on the properties in Clearview Township, my understanding, have not increased since 2016. So the assessments of the existing homes remains the same. The growth assessment is something that happens that helps our budgets overall, but it does not impact an increase to the existing property owners for assessments. Okay, that's my only comment.
All right.
If I may just add to that.
Please.
When we do talk about these new homes coming onto our roll, they too are assessed at what they would have been sold for on January 1st, 2016. So any of the newer builds that we have, they're not coming onto our roll at their current market value. It's what their market value would have been on January 1st, 2016.
And of course, many of those homes wouldn't have even existed at that date. So the work of MPAC are just surmising what that value would be based on other projects and other homes of similar value.
You're absolutely correct, Your Worship. Those homes didn't exist in Stayner at the time, and I use Stayner as an example because it's the most obvious.
Sure.
So they have to best guess.
Okay. All right. So let's go to questions. Thank you very much, staff. Questions from our councilors. Do you have any questions to Kelly, to the CAO, and perhaps any of our senior managers that are in the room? This is in regards to what they presented so far. Yes, Mr. MacArthur first.
Yeah, Kelly, I'm just wondering then, and all the council here, so we're at 5.24. Where do we, I guess, I want to start the conversation, but where do we want to be, and how many dollars will we have to take off the township portion to say drop this per 1%?
Excellent question. Through your worship to Councillor MacArthur, we're looking at about $350,000 for one net percent tax increase. So if you want that at 4.24, it would be around $350,000 would have to come out of the budget, tax funded budget.
Okay. Any other question? Thank you for that. It's a good question. Any other questions from the members? Yes, Mr. Beelan?
Thank you, Worship. Kelly, is there anything from the police that says or from the province that they're going to pay the police portion next year? Because next year we're looking, if they don't, we're looking at a sizable increase next year. And I'm also wondering, how does the Simcoe County tax increase from this year compared to last year?
Through your worship to Councillor Beelan, again, excellent question. We do have any assurances that they will cover. What I personally believe is the large increase this year was due to the negotiations of the union contract. And because that was, I believe it was a 14% increase, that was the major chunk. So they put the entire increase on the 2025 budget. What my hope is going forward is we come back down to reasonable increases, but I don't know. And I'm sorry, the second part of your question?
How does the Simcoe County increase compare to last year's increase? I know that there's a few things that it shouldn't be as big next year. I'm just looking about next year as well.
Yeah, so last year it was actually at the 3.7. This year it's at the 3.625. So very close.
I'll just add to that, Councillor Beelan, there's some pretty significant work that the county is going to be entering into in 2025. The largest single capital project is going to be the Rose Street build. There's a multi-use building that'll have both affordable housing, accessible housing, rental housing, as well as Ontario Works buildings, et cetera. That's all going to be built on the Rose Street site. It's probably one of the most expensive builds that county has ever been involved in on a standalone basis. So the county's going to own this entire structure once it's all done. If you're familiar with some of the county works, they built the emergency service center in the city of Barrie as a cooperative between the city of Barrie and the county. It was a shared use building, and so there was shared specific costs. But the big build this year is going to be this Rose Street project, which unfortunately will be a multi-year build because it's pretty complex. But they're going to spend a lot of money this 2025 to get that going. All right. Is there any other questions from members at this time? To any of our staff? Anything that's been presented thus far? Okay, I have one quick question. Kelly, you and I sat in your office and had a brief conversation about the discussion about the assessed value number that you use, 315,000, I think it is. So can you just explain how that number is the number that ends up appearing in your budget as the assessed value house that we use to create that number? Can you just explain how that comes to be?
Thank you, Worship. Great question. That number comes to us from MPAC. So
Yes.
MPAC takes all the values of our properties and gives us a median price. And that is the 315,000. So it's, you know, the high numbers are dropped, the low numbers are dropped. This one is the median. And that's what we use to describe the average home in Clearview. We know very well it's not. But we do need a number to sort of show out there. I do try and also iterate what it is per 100,000 so people can actually look at their own personal assessment and say, oh, okay, so this is about what I should expect on my tax bill. And that number is around $69 per 100,000.
That was going to be my next question. So for a $100,000 assessment, about $69 is the number that we're going to be asking if we move ahead at the 5.24. Is that correct?
As the annual increase, correct.
Right. And the last thing I'd like you to explain, for the benefit of council, for the benefit of the public, and mostly for the benefit of the media, why we use the blended rate when we speak about the numbers here. This number you're presenting to us is a 5.24 blended net value versus what was appeared in the local Creemore Echo was a 10.6% increase. Obviously, that's not the number that we deal with. So can you just help explain that for me?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Great question. So the original number that was reported, the 10%, that is the number that is a dollar value increase over the prior year budget. It has absolutely nothing to do with calculating out what your taxes are going to be. What the taxes are going to be is what that number is. So at 5%, you would take your tax bill from last year and add 5%. And that's how we calculate it out. It's blending all of the increases across the board and coming up with, this is what the tax rate's going to be. And they're always estimated. We have to go through quite a calculation to bring in industrial and commercial and farm. It's not straightforward, but this is based on what you would expect on a residential property.
Right. So when we talk about the words a blended rate or a net value, that's essentially the same as what we're speaking. It's the same nomenclature that we're using. The point that I think is important to understand, when the public see their new tax bill in 2025, the increases that could be applied will be from the blended and or net values only. And so if they're concerned about their tax increases coming this year, the number that we are presenting here as a net is the number that they should be considering.
Absolutely.
Right. Whereas the, local media coverage and certainly on social media coverage in regards to it being a 10.6% is completely false. That's not what has been presented for the public and taxpayers' dollars. That's right. Okay. Thanks very much for helping me clarify that. Members of council, we can move on in our agenda because we have, thank you very much, Kelly. We now move on to a very important part. We have item 3.2. We want to do a little clarification here about the Georgian Triangle Humane Society gift agreement. That they presented to us the other day, and part of that presentation, our CAO acknowledged that that's already been done. And then a little conversation happened behind the scenes to confirm exactly what happened there. And so we wanted to make sure that we get this absolutely clear in the eyes of the public and for our treasury to activate and exercise this request that council's brought forward. It was as a result of last year. So I'll read the motion and then I'll look for a mover and seconder. Perhaps Mr. CAO can speak to it further. Okay. Recommendation be it resolved, the Council of Township of Clearview hereby receive report LS 031-2024, the Georgian Triangle Humane Society funding gift agreement dated December the 4th, 2024. And item 1, that council directs the treasurer, director of finance to sign the Georgian Triangle Humane Society gift agreement as attached to Appendix B, outlining the Township of Clearview's 10-year capital donation in the amount of $225,000 towards the build of the GTHS new facility. And item 2, that the annual capital commitment of $22,500 form part of the township's base budget for the 10-year period 2024 through 2033. Can I get a mover and seconder on this motion, please? Ms. Deneen and Mr. MacArthur, thank you very much. Mr. CAO, could you just help us understand why this motion is now in front of us when we did have this motion last year?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So this was a budget presentation last year. And so when we moved to have it put in the budget, we did. But the way our financial system set up, we recorded it with Questica, but it didn't get on our budget. The two programs didn't communicate that change. Council did as a result of that information last year. If you recall, we were comparing all the communities that were participating, and based on population and area assessments, this is the figure that we came up that each would contribute, and ours was the 22.5. We're not the highest. I don't think we're the lowest. We're somewhere down below half of what the actual costs will be. And the other communities were moving in this direction. Not sure where they all are at this point in time, but Georgian communities, for their own purpose, for their own borrowings, they need to have letters confirming that we're involved in the next 10 years. And they'll probably need those from all the organizations involved before they can proceed. So this is really just finalizing, cleaning up what needed to be cleaned up last year. And ultimately, this agreement came in after the fact, but it's something that they'll need. That's the best way I can describe it.
Right. Actually, John, I just want to correct you on one small thing. It's not Georgian Communities, it's the Georgian Triangle Humane Society. You were just at a meeting about Georgian Communities. I know you were, so I can appreciate that. I'm the first one to say that I can speak, get things mixed up too. So there.
Yes, Georgian Triangle.
Georgian Triangle
Humane
Humane Society. Thank you very much. All right, appreciate that. Is there any questions? Do you have one, Paul? Yes, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, with the, as you're in your article, what you wrote us, it's considered a capital for capital purchases. In other words, it's for the construction of the new facility. If they do not proceed with that new construction, is our commitment still giving the money, say, for operating credit, or is it, do they have to build in order to get this money?
I would suggest that's something that they should bank. They should keep it in trust until they know that they are building, because if they don't proceed, we would expect to get the money back. And
Are we-
I'll have that discussion with them.
Well, or should we put it in reserve for them when they do start building, that we control it?
Well, we could do that as well.
I
Yes,
think
that's
we're-
not a bad idea.
Like, I think we should control it because I have a bit of a stigma because we don't use them as our caretaker of our
Yeah.
animals. I know a lot of people still take our Clearview cats and dogs up there, but our commitment is not to them. And I would like it to be, but it doesn't work yet. But I would like to make sure that if they don't, this is all predicated because they got an $8 million donation from one person. So now they're looking for the rest. If they all of a sudden say, hey, we're going to build a $9 million facility, are we going to treat this agreement different than we would a $13 million?
I don't think that was our intent. I think this is really about as far as we can go in providing $22,500 over the next 10 years. I think that's a fair contribution on our behalf, and they'll be challenged to keep the budget for the build on target, and or they'll have to make changes. I don't think that we'll be adding any more money to this.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's a council decision, but I think once you make the pledge, that's the pledge.
Okay, well, I just make the recommendation then, our addition to it, that if we proceed with this, that we keep the money in reserve until such time as they do build.
Okay.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, are you looking for an amendment?
I would appreciate a friendly amendment if they're willing.
Perhaps Madam Clerk, you could help us with that. Would there be a seconder on this amendment? Mr. Broderick, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, if you could write something up there and we'll discuss it with the Deputy Mayor while we're having other items. Anybody else with any questions? Anybody else? Any questions? Yes, Mr. Walker?
Yeah, your worship, I just agree with the deputy mayor that I believe that we should put that in a reserve and that at such time as they require it, that to be transferred over.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. I do want to bring one point or a question actually to the Treasury. This is 2024 we're in right now. Have we already forwarded the 2024 contribution?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, that contribution has not been forwarded.
Okay. All right. So we still have it in our 2024 budget, waiting for it to appear on the desk of the mayor for a signature, I presume. Fair enough. Okay. So we can establish that. Madam Clerk, have you got something there for us? Well, it hasn't been spent yet, so it's sitting in the account. It's still 2024 right now. So we passed this resolution. The resolution does say 2024 through 2033, so it would be. Yes, it would be. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. The amendment before council has been moved by Deputy Mayor and then seconded by Councillor Broderick. And it's be it resolved, the motion before council be amended to add a third part stating that the Township of Clearview will keep the annual amount of support in a reserve until the GTHS requires a capital amount for their build.
Is that fair?
I would almost want it that it's until the capital project proceeds. Or something to that effect.
If I may, Your Worship,
Yes.
I think that's a good suggestion because they may start construction and need the progress payments. So I think that's a good point.
We could also add to the point that it's up to that year's allotment, we would fund or provide when they went on commencement.
Well, that can be worked out when
Yeah.
it's time to actually disperse,
Yes.
right? You comfortable, Madam Clerk? Okay, reread on the amendment.
Thank you. The amendment is be it resolved, the motion before council be amended to add a third part stating that the Township of Clearview will keep the annual amount of support in a reserve until the GTHS capital project proceeds.
Okay, we've got a mover and seconder. Any further discussion on that? Anybody else? Nothing further? I'm prepared to call the motion. All in favor? Okay, the amendment carries. Thank you. Back to the main motion. Anything further on the main motion with the amendment? All right, well, we've got a mover and seconder on the original motion. I'm prepared to call the original motion as amended. Those in favor? And that carries unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, perhaps John and Kelly, you can just update us if there's any further discussions with the GTHS about this amended motion, and we'll keep up to date on that. Okay, thank you very much, folks. All right, council, we're going to move to item number 3.3, which is the council members' motions. So at this point, I'm going to ask for members to basically put up their hands and bring forward their motions. I would ask that if you have a motion, that you bring forward one motion at a time and perhaps leave room for your fellow colleagues to jump in with their motions. I don't want to go to one person and have 6 all from one person, and then, you know, I think it'd be fair to move it around the room a little bit. So be strategic if you would, and find the motion that you would like to bring forward first. And Madam Clerk will keep track of these. Each motion that'll be brought forward, we'll consider it being moved by the individual who brings it forward, and we'll seek a seconder to put it on the floor. I'm opening the floor. Who has the first motion? I'm looking back and forth. Mr. Beelan, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is not a decrease in the budget. This is an increase. I would like to move that we add $6,500 to the Police Services Board budget due to the fact that the amount we need to pay for insurance, administration, et cetera, for that board is a little bit higher than we anticipated. We anticipated 10,000, but it looks like it's going to be 16,500.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder on the motion? Mr. Broderick, thank you very much. Any discussion on this motion? Anybody? As Mr. Beelan said, that is pretty straightforward motion. Our actual board is going to be meeting tonight to have a discussion at the Huronia West OPP board. And it was a big surprise to all of us on the board that the costs are quite high to insure a board like this. Remember, this board sits separate from the Municipal Act. It sits underneath the Police Act, but we're responsible to operate and fund it. So if I can ask the treasurer, you'll just add this as part of the OPP costs and create it as a subline in the budget. So there'll be create a budget line and creating for the operation of the board. Is that correct?
Thank you, Worship. It won't go through the actual OPP as it is a separate board.
Yes.
But the clerk and I have discussed, and it will be set up likely through a one-line administration budget line.
So it'll be in the administration budget then?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, so that's where it'll appear as a line in the administration budget. All right. Nothing further from our members? All right, we've got a mover and seconder. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Other members for other motions? Mr. Walker's next. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This with regards to the senior housing, motion that we maintain the 100,000 original as in our budget, and that we drop the additional 100,000 addition this year. Because it was supposed to increase by 100,000 each
That's
year.
correct? Yeah.
So we just go with the original and drop the additional.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a seconder on the floor? Mr. MacArthur, thank you very much. Discussion? Anything else you want to say about it, Mr. Walker?
Well, I'm just going to say that since now that it's nice to keep that in this year, as we know that in the future, we will have a building with seniors involved. And it might be nice to have that as a fund in case we have to do some repairs or alterations to that facility at this point. Next year, I believe then we can discuss whether we keep it or whether we totally drop that senior housing line
Okay.
as additional.
All right. I think I saw some other cards here. So Mr. Deputy Mayor first, then Phyllis, and then John Broderick. Go ahead.
Councillor Walker, in your request with the not increasing the 100,000, are you looking at that for future years as well? Because we've gone through this 2 years in a row. I would make request or consider that we leave it at 100,000 per year indefinitely until such time as we make a further decision.
Yes, my intent was to put it in this year and then discuss it next year. So, but yes, leave it indefinite, then that, I mean, it can be opened up
That's fine, but
at
right
any
now,
year, a budget year for discussion, the next year. So certainly, yeah, that can go that way.
we keep reducing it the last 2 years. It should be taken out, or 3
Yes,
years
3
now.
years.
So take it out and then we can look at increasing if we need to, or take it out
Yes,
as our need.
Okay.
So, but so we don't have to revisit this next year.
Can I ask, is that a friendly amendment?
I would think so.
All right. That's comfortable for you?
Works for me.
Yes, jump in, please.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just going to read out the motion just to make sure I have it correctly with the friendly amendment. So be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve adding $100,000 to the Senior Affordable Housing Reserve for the 2025 budget and approve eliminating the ongoing annual increase to this reserve. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's,
I think the word should be in there, the continuing. The
yes, not adding, but
$100,000
continuing,
contribution,
yes.
because we have been making that contribution for 5 years now. I think it's been 5 or 4. It's about 5. So about 5 or 6 maybe. Quick question to Kelly. Madam Treasurer, do you even know what's in that account? I don't know if you could look that up.
Your worship, effective the end of this year, there'll be $600,000 in that
So it's
reserve.
probably been at least 5. Yeah.
I believe it's been 7 years because I believe there was 1 year when we did not contribute to the reserve at all.
Oh, okay. Nevertheless, appreciate that. Okay, that's good information. Do you have something else? Okay, thank you. Mr. Broderick.
Thank you, Your Worship. This motion goes against the intent of the original motion, so I can't support it.
I see. Okay. Nothing further? Okay. Other members of council with any questions on the motion put forward with the friendly? Yes, Mr. Beelan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I got several problems with this. I mean, we're facing a very big budget increase, and you'd hate to tax people out of their house and home, which I don't think we are anymore. I mean, the increase isn't that big, but we have no idea, or at least I haven't heard any numbers on how many seniors need this help. To me, it's just as important to help anyone in poverty. We have no idea how to administer this. Is it for only long-term residents? What is a long-term resident? How do we delve into whether they actually need this? Are we going to look into their incomes or what they possess? Are we going to subsidize their rent? We already contribute to the county who is helping with this. I don't think we need it. I don't think we need the increase. I don't think we need to contribute any more right now because we have no idea how to administer it, what we're going to do. And to me, it's a luxury item that we just can't afford. So why we're donating any this year is a mystery to me. And certainly we shouldn't be increasing it every year.
Okay, I'm listening. Mr. Walker next.
Thank you, Your Worship. The intent, though, of this whole process, when it started, was to put funds away and hoping that we could have a developer come forward and work with a developer to produce senior housing. Unfortunately, developers have not stepped forward to offer that opportunity. Now that we have purchased and will be the owners of a building that has seniors in it, I'm like to keep the 100,000 added this year that we normally do, so that if we need to do some work, we have the funds available to do some upgrades or whatever on that facility. We are not, at this point, the developers are not coming forward. So I think we need to look at that for ourselves, for that facility, if we need it. And if not, it's there for future use at some point at the discretion of council of where it goes.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Anybody else with any questions? Mr. Broderick again, please.
Yeah, my original intent as the co-sponsor of the original motion was for affordable housing, period. Wasn't specifically for senior housing, although that's a big part of it. The motion morphed into a senior housing motion. The intent was to build a capital of $2 million. And from there, hopefully we would be able to attract a developer to work with us on a project. We're nowhere near the $2 million, so it's no surprise to me that we have no traction on it yet.
All right. Thank you for that. Any other members on this topic? Yes, Mr. MacArthur?
Yeah, I'm in favor of keeping it going at 100,000 because as we just learned with the OPP, it'd be a lot easier just to go along little each year rather than in 10 years, say, okay, we got this project we need, all of a sudden we need $2 million or something all in one foul swoop. So I think we just keep inching along at this pace and it's a good idea.
Okay. Other members of council? Nothing. Yes, Mr. Beelan, one more time.
Thank you, your worship. I still don't think we can afford it. What about the other poor, like John says, it's not just seniors. What about people on low income, that need single mothers or just someone that just can't afford housing? And then are we just covering up the fact that maybe the federal government needs to increase, old age security for those that need it? I really have a problem with this. We can't afford, it's hard to put 100,000 away. We could bring this down, 0.3% of our budget is going to this, or the increase. So is the increase that we're suggesting too much? Can we afford it? Maybe we can bring it back next year. I think we should do away with the increase and then decide every year whether we want to put any money into this reserve or not. Right now, we have 600,000 and we have no idea what to do with it or how to do it. So I don't think we need to do it this year, any money, let alone 100,000. But I certainly don't want to see it increase every year by 100,000. So that part of the motion I like. And I think every year that should be, to me, a separate motion. And then the other motion is how much we donate this year, if any. Thank you.
Are you asking for some type of separated motion or? Because I would.
No, because
I would
we're going to
recommend
vote on this motion and then we can make another motion if this one fails or passes, whatever.
That's where I was going to recommend actually that we could just see where this one lands and you could bring in a second motion at another time. Mr. MacArthur again?
Yeah, so Councilor Beelan makes a good point of what or where this is going. So I may be looking to CEO Ferguson, where might this fall under the economic development portion, or do we need to set up a subcommittee, or where do we want to direct this to maybe get some kind of plans in future years?
Very good. Before I go to the CAO, I want to just point out that if you look across our senior managers, all of them that are here, there are no senior managers here. There's nobody who does housing. Housing is not part of the portfolio of this municipal government. It is not. Okay? So I supported the original motion back in the day, Mr. Broderick. And, but I have to tell you, the frustration of this is that there is no program to support seniors housing. We don't have a program to support affordable housing. It's not in our responsibility. So the challenge here is that we have to have faith in the fact that we're dealing with the upper tier government, the county of Simcoe, who are doing what they can. I just mentioned it there a few minutes ago about building this Rose Street project. It's an enormous project for Virginia. It's the single largest housing build we've ever done in the county. It's just enormous. You'll have to honestly take a look at it. But the point is, Mr. MacArthur, is that, you know, there is no staff person who this falls into. And so through the CAO, you know, it would have to be other duties as assigned, Mr. CAO. You know, suddenly you're going to be responsible for housing. And, you know, when we close on this project, We will have a housing rental operation that we have to operate and manage. And there has been some preliminary discussions with our friends at the county to see if they can help us operate that. Because honestly, they have the expertise. With great respect to our staff here, our staff do not. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, yeah, it's a complicated issue. And the only thing that comes to mind where I think that you could use the money in the future where you're not the landlord or the developer is similar to the arrangements that we made with Jarlette on DCs. We could use that money to purchase DCs that are specifically directed to build senior housing. So we could make a contribution towards that. That might be an incentive to build a senior housing building. And when you look at our treasurer just said there's 600,000 in the account. And you take a look at today, the amount of money you need to develop something is significant to even have an impact. If you look at just homes in the community that are selling for $1 million, and they're not like a commercial grade type of home either. And so I think the only appropriate use with that amount of money would be to keep it to allocate DCs specifically for senior housing. That would be, if there's another suggestion, I certainly would offer that suggestion to council, but that's the only thing that comes to mind right now.
Thank you very much. I concur. Members of council, if there's something further, I would ask perhaps the clerk could read the whole motion again since we've had little changes to it, and then I'm going to call the motion.
Thank you, Worship. The motion reads, moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor MacArthur. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve adding $100,000 to the Senior Affordable Housing Reserve for the 2025 budget and approve eliminating the continual annual increases to this reserve.
The council, nothing further? I'm prepared to call the motion. Those in favor? Those opposed? That carries by a narrow margin. Thank you very much. That's what we expect actually out of this council meeting today, folks, because this is a difficult budget discussion. So thank you very much. All right. I'm looking around the table. Are there other motions for other? You have Mr. Oh, we have. Yeah.
I think everybody.
All right. Budget related motions.
I think
Mr.
everybody's
The
got-
deputy mayor, please.
We would ask to do one at a time.
Yeah, one at a time, I think is a better way to do
We'll
it.
change topic a bit here. I'd like to make a motion that we defer the replacement of the tourism building roof until such time as we do a review of the property's usage, a complete usage. In the interim, we repair the existing roof. Yep. We have,
I'm listening.
you need a seconder.
I would need a second. Is there a seconder on this? Mr. Beelan, thank you very much. All right, discussion. Go ahead. Tell us all about it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Director Vachon brought forward a really interesting concept drawing at our budget meetings in regards to a potential home someday for our Parks and Rep Committee. I'm of the belief that we have to do a review of that building, the old co-op building, because it is an old building. We have a couple of things going on right now with the new the standard care home, the blending of potential services. The big thing with that property, it's a gem in the downtown. And I don't know it's worth putting money into the old building and whether we should do a complete review of what goes on with that property. Yes, they showed us pictures of some screw nails coming out. We would have to remove a complete solar project to do it. I would like to get it fixed for now, and then we start looking forward to a review of what we want to do with that property.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious about costs. We know what the costs are to replace it. Do we have an idea what the costs are for such a repair? I'm just questioning, would we be spending good money after bad? I don't know.
I don't have it right in front of me, but I did have that fabulous report that you talked about with the photographs. Perhaps, Mr. Vashon, do you have that information in front of you, in regards to that building?
Yes, your worship, I do have the information in front of me.
Okay, was there a comment in there about repair? I think there was a comment about repair, was there?
My understanding is the proposal that was put forward by Garland Canada Inc. was to actually repair the existing roof. It wasn't to replace the entire roof. That was the repair to the extent that they recommend. Maybe there's an opportunity to downscale that repair as per Deputy Mayor's suggestion. That's kind of like an all-in repair, but not a replacement. Our understanding working with Mr. DeCanish is that a complete replacement would be perhaps even 3 times as much as what was proposed for the repairs.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I apologize, I don't have it right in front of me, but do you recall that?
Well, I do,
Part of
but
that
my
presentation?
concern I have, and I've talked to Terry a bit about this. And you and I have talked about it too, your
Mhm.
worship, as far as what shape is the roof in. I would feel if I just $110,000 is a lot of money to just fixing somebody's roof. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to, even if we do a patch job, send somebody up to put screws on it. If we don't know what we're gonna do with the building, $100,000 is a lot of money for 1 or 2 years. And I really like, and reading the report, it's, I mean, yeah, they want to do some work to it, but I don't know that we need to spend $110,000 right now if people agree that it's may not be the building for that property going forward.
Okay. Other members account, thank you. Other members, any questions? Yes, Mr. Beelan?
I remember we were talking about this before, and is there some kind of limit to what building could be there if we decide to tear it down? Was there something that limits what could be put there?
I tell you what, I'm gonna go to Amy Can. This is a good one, right off the cuff. Amy, tell us
Thank
a little
you.
bit about the restrictions on that particular property for buildings.
Thank you, your worship. So zoning.
Could you turn your mic on? Is it on? Oh,
It
there
is
we go.
on, yeah.
Okay.
Zoning would certainly apply to redevelopment of the property. I can look up for you what the specific zoning is and what the setback and coverage requirements are. But if we removed the building and reconstructed something else, the use and the site and building regulations would have to comply with zoning.
Can I ask too, then, there's also a setback rule in regards to the railway? Because it is a deactivated railway, but it's still considered a transit hub or transit route. Is that right, Amy? So we have to be
Yes.
careful about what type of structure goes next to it?
Yes, your worship, that's correct. 30 meters, I believe, is the setback for buildings and structures applicable to the rail corridor.
Yeah. But
And that's included in the zoning bylaw.
the point being is that we can build right up to the edge of the trail, just to, if the rail becomes reactivated, we'd have to tear it down. We have to remove it. So. Mr. Beelan, does that help? Okay, other questions? Thank you, Amy. Yes, you want to jump in here? Yeah, go right ahead.
Thank you, your worship. So the motion before council has been moved by Deputy Mayor Van Stavern, seconded by Councillor Beelan. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby remove the replacement repair of the tourism building roof from the Parks and Recreation 2025 capital budget in the amount of $120,000, and that the township conduct a complete review of facility and uses of the building and property before any future repairs or replacements are proposed.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Walker?
Your worship, we still have to do repairs on that roof of some sort. If we have issues with leakage, deterioration of trussing, et cetera, we still need to do some repair to that facility at this point in time to protect what we have internally in it. So I think we need to have something put in that motion with regards to repairing. I'm just not sure how to word it, but we need to look after the repairs that need to be done. We cannot just ignore it and walk away from it.
Okay. Deneen?
Through your worship to Councillor Walker, maybe we should just reduce it by half and leave and put it at 60,000. And then it'll be there if we don't if we don't need it, or if we get something easier to do, then it'll end up there for reserves for future. Would you go with a friendly amendment to just reduce it to half, 60?
Okay. Friendly amendment? Mover and seconder, okay with that? You can change that in the motion. Thank you for that recommendation. Mr. MacArthur?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, question be to Terry, or, do we need to budget a line at all, or can the repair just be covered under maintenance or regular building maintenance somewhere?
Terry?
Thank you, Your Worship. I may have to defer that question to Treasurer McDonald, because although I proposed this project on behalf of our department, because we mainly use that facility is actually, the repairs is under a building general account, not really our department's operational account, if I could, but I'll defer to perhaps Treasurer McDonald to kind of clarify that a bit more.
All right. Treasurer McDonald, it is a shared use building for sure, although we all know it's a recreation building. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do actually have an administration building replacement reserve that sits at about $300,000. So if you would like to remove the 120 from taxation, we could then use $60,000 from the building replacement reserve. And that would allow Mr. Vachon to do a proper get a good idea of whether or not that's going to cover any of the repairs that are needed. And then if it is, for whatever reason, more funding is required, that reserve is still available. He'd be able to come back to council and request additional funding from that reserve to cover the repair.
She's proposing a friendly amendment. How about that? Would you like to do? Yes, go ahead.
I got to agree with those comments. My concern is, and it's a two-part. One is, I really believe that we, at some point in time, have to look at a proper building there. And I mean, that building's 80, 100 years old. It was the old feed mill building. I see the old steel on it. It's heavy steel. I see the screws with the lead-based, the nails with the lead-based washers on them. And I'm looking at that and thinking, those are some pretty good old roofs. Can we get somebody local to go in there? I've done it with roofs myself before.
Sure.
Go in and fix them, and then we make a proper plan. And if it still comes back, which is recommended now, we can still move forward with it through reserves, but not through taxation that way.
Okay. A friendly amendment with the reserve, Madam Clerk? You're going to be busy here today. This is great. All right. The last point I just want to bring up, if I may, since you guys haven't had any more questions, is that the administrative side of that building is that it is the document vault, document storage. And so that's why it qualifies for that as administrative purposes. Many years ago, we absolutely needed a better location to put our documents. Part of running a municipal government is you have to have good control of your documents, and that goes through the clerk's department. And so by establishing that building, and by the fact we were able to purchase that building at a tremendous price, very low at the time, that's why we're able to use that building as it is today. Excuse me, there has been some internal renovation work done on it, a little bit of external renovation work done on it. But overall, I support what the deputy mayor is saying. It is an older building, and it's been sort of retrofitted to serve the purposes that we need. I think the point of this whole motion that I very much support, Deputy Mayor, is that we need to have a really good assessment on what we're doing over there as far as recreation, because we have a building that's would be slated, it's in our budget if we get these grants and things move forward, that we will build a brand new recreation building. And that being said, it would be really something for us to build a brand new, beautiful building right next to an old building that's falling down with a roof that's in terrible shape. So I think that we need to have a better plan over there to have a really good look at what we're going to do and how we're going to execute delivering the services of recreation services from those facilities. And so I really support the idea that we need to do that. My question to the Director of Recreation, Terry, would be, this is covered in the Recreation Master Plan. There's a section in there about the fact that we need facilities for for our facility or for our equipments and so on. And so I think we need to take another look at that small section that's in the recreation plan. Would you not agree? And sort of use that as the basis how we need to take a really good look at this property and how we're going to use this property to deliver the services. Would you agree, Terry?
Yes, I agree, Your Worship. Absolutely. And also, if I may, Your Worship, just to remind council, that tourism building was also slated to be part of the Stainer Downtown Revitalization Project. If you recall, we did
Yep.
phase 1 over on Brock Street. Phase 2 was supposed to be the station park, the parking lot where the farmers market is, and the tourism building. That was all supposed to be part and parcel of that project. We've since kind of put it on hold, working with the Public Works Department and the Planning Department. There's more to that plan than just putting buildings above the ground. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the ground. So we've kind of shelved that project a little bit. We will be bringing a report back to council. But I just want to remind council that that building was slated to be part of that planning process. And it could perhaps still be done. It just comes from a timing perspective to Deputy Mayor's point is, do we look at this from a couple of years from now, or do we start reviewing this, next year? But that was supposed to be part of that plan. Thank you, Your Worship. But I do agree with your comment.
Yeah, thank you. Council, I do have one more question for the treasurer. I'll get to you in a minute, Mr. Broderick. The administration building reserve, do we put an annual contribution into that? I'm not aware of that.
Yes, Your Worship, but there's $50,000 a year that goes into that reserve.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Broderick, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can certainly appreciate all of the comments on the building thus far, and yes, it is an old building. My concern is by cutting it in half, can we do the job? Can we sustain the building? I just want to remind council to be mindful of something that happens all too often, and that's two buildings, and that's demolition by neglect.
Yes. Appreciate that. I think as I was trying to state in my comments, Councillor Broderick, is that the second part of the Deputy Mayor's motion is one that spoke to me about having a good review, because while we want to see a new facility built on that former co-op storage building site, would be a great opportunity for our recreation staff to have a spot to work from. If we move ahead with that, what use would the tourism building be to move into a full tourism operation, as well as the barn storage side of that could actually be moved into the other. So the reality is we may end up demoing that building and build a new one, or demo the whole site and build a beautiful big facility. It's all about how much our taxpayers are able to support this, and what the demands are on recreation services. And so it's interesting because recreation services is one of the things we get an awful lot of attention to from our public. We certainly do. So we have to pay attention to that, and we have to be able to provide the facilities and that are needed. So certainly the public are asking for it. If there's nothing further, anybody else with any questions or comments? All right, Madam Clerk, you want to read the entire motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Van Staveren, seconded by Councillor Beelan. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby remove the tourism building roof replacement/repair from the Parks and Recreation 2025 capital budget in the amount of $120,000, and that any repairs are required for the tourism building roof be funded from the Administration Building Reserve up to a maximum of $60,000, and that the township conduct a complete review of the facilities and uses of the building and property before any future repairs, replacements are proposed.
Anything further? Council, you've got a motion with a mover and seconder with some friendly amendments. We appreciate those. And I'm prepared to call the motion. Those in favor? Wow, there you go. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, Council. All right. Looking down the table, I know Paul's got a few. Anybody else? Any other counselors with any motions they'd like to bring forward? Mr. Beelan, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move that we delay putting in the kitchen and storage renovations in the Creemore Arena. I was with Terry and we went over it. I think it's a great idea. I just think our budget increase this year is just way too much and that we should delay this until we can afford it. It's sort of a luxury item. The Creemore Arena and Hall function without this renovation. It's not critical, although it would be it's a necessity, not a necessity. So I mean, it still looks good now but I agree it would be more functional with the renovations. And then it would give Terry time to sort of explain to everyone, because I don't think everyone's been in the building. You almost have to be there and have him explain what he wants to do. It makes sense. I just don't think we can afford it this year.
Who is it that? Oh, you have it? What's the value of it?
Thank you, worship. I believe it's $50,000.
50,000 was what was budgeted for the reno, kitchen reno? And 15 of it is from reserves. Is that Terry? Does that sound familiar to you? Go ahead, Madam Clerk, or this is the clerk. You're the treasurer. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The total value of the project is $50,000. However, 15 of that was being funded from the reserve. So the actual tax effect is 35,000.
Okay. So in the motion, we're going to remove the entire project,
I was going to defer it until next year.
defer to 2026.
Yes.
Okay. That's in the motion.
I can add that it be brought back to 2026.
I do think it's a good idea. It makes the hall more functional. And it does give all of council time to go over the renovation and say,
Yeah.
does that make sense? Or is there something else we want to do? I think we didn't even know about this until a few weeks ago. So it doesn't really give us much time to think about it. If we delay it for a year, it gives everyone time to go there and have a look and get their ideas on what we want to do.
Okay. All right, members of council, any questions, comments? Yes, we got some questions. I see Mr. Broderick. Are you asking for a question too? You've got a green card instead of a yellow card. It's already been seconded by Ms. Deneen. Thank you. Mr. Broderick, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. My question is to Terry, through you to Terry. If we were to defer this to 2026, how would that affect operations for 2025?
Terry?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Broderick. I don't think it would have an impact on the operations. To Councillor Beelan's point, I think it's a make sense project. Do we do it next year or the year after? I don't think it's a real convenience for the folks that are already using the existing facility. If I can give an example, the Creemore Coyotes uses the bar area to serve their alcohol for their games. The bar area is very small. It needs a lot of work. It's been ran down over the years, so it'll be a better convenience for them to operate out of the kitchen area. To Councilor Beelan's point, there's a bunch of moving parts to that project. It's not like a one-shot deal. It's about renovating the bar and the kitchen area, and turning the kitchen into a bit of a servery versus a kitchen that it is now. It's not a bona fide kitchen right now. It doesn't have any of the safety features that a kitchen is supposed to have. So the thought was to move that into a bit of a servery. So it would just provide more convenience to our stakeholders that are using the hall. Deferring it a year will just make it less convenient for another year.
Okay. Other questions? Sorry, go ahead. Somebody? Is that you?
I was just wondering if we should leave the line in there, and does it make any sense to leave it and put some of the reserve money in it at this time and add to it next year? Like leave the line there? And just have it come from reserves and just start it off? Kelly, I guess that would be a question for you. Thank you.
Kelly, and then follow up with Terry. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Deneen. So the suggestion is to fund the entire project from the reserve? Okay, I think I understand now. Absolutely.
I guess through your worship to Terry, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's where I was hoping we were going to hear from Terry.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I had my hand up. I was hoping that, yeah, so whatever amount council directs us to spend, 50,000 was a number that we just used. There's so many moving parts to that project that it's hard to pinpoint an exact amount. 50,000 was amount that was thought of just based on previous expenditures that we've had. But if, to Councillor Deneen's point, if council reduces that to whatever amount, we'll work with that amount and get as much done as we possibly can with that amount. If it's 20, 30,000, 10,000, whatever that is, we will work with what we got and do what we can. But it does make sense, Councillor Deneen, to your point, we'll work with whatever amount council provides.
I'm going to follow up with a question before I go to Councillor MacArthur. Terry, can you just sort of outline for council's purposes? There's multiple things that need to be renovated in that sort of Creemore community center area.
Yep.
The kitchen is certainly is what's just focused on and what's is written up, but also the former coat check area and so on. Is that what you're talking about? Like,
Correct.
there's multiple pieces there that need to be done. What are you looking to do in 2025?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And yes, you're absolutely right. It is that whole location. We didn't have during my presentation, I mentioned I didn't have a better word. I just used renovation of the kitchen area because that's probably the bulk of it. But it's that whole kitchen, bar, coat check area. Right now, we have moved the chairs and the tables out of the hall into the former coat checked area. So
Okay.
we're hoping to put a wall up to kind of delineate that from the public. Kids tend to like to play on chairs and tables. So one of the projects was to put up a wall to delineate that storage area. Other parts was to remove a wall in the bar area, if you can know what I'm talking about, to open that up as a full storage. There is no storage for that hall, unfortunately. So by removing that wall and adding another wall, we're creating a bona fide storage area. And in the kitchen, there's a lot of old cupboards, old counters, old flooring, old roll-up doors. So the plan there was to renovate all of that and put a new roll-up door, put a new floor, and make that location more of a servery versus a kitchen. It does get used for weddings and whatnot, but most of the time it's caterers that come in with pre-cooked meals. And so we want to be able to provide countertop, sinks to wash their dishes and that kind of stuff. But so it's all encompassing that whole corner.
Okay, go ahead, Phyllis.
Just a little bit more then, because I don't know the logistics, and Councillor Beelan's been there and you've explained it to him, and we didn't have any prior knowledge of what you wanted done.
Mhm.
I'm looking to maybe Councillor Beelan to give us a dollar amount for this, if possible, what he thinks might work.
Mr. Beelan?
I don't know, 50,000 sound like you probably could do this. I mean, you're basically putting up a cement wall, tearing down a wall, adding a door. It didn't seem unreasonable for 50,000. My just thing is, can we afford it this year under the budget restraints that we're on? Like, we already have a big increase already. I just thought it's not critical to the operation of the hall. We could wait a year and get a better understanding and maybe ideas on how we want to do it and what we want to do. Because this was sort of a surprise to us.
Yeah.
It didn't give us a lot of time. I'm glad Terry had the time to go over and go to the arena with me and we could have a look at it. I just think we can wait a year. 50,000 sounds reasonable, whether we want to put 20K in this year or I just thought because of this increase, we can save 35,000 from taxation this year by waiting a year.
And that's a good point. Councillor Janine.
Again, can we put 20,000 then in from reserves into that line for future, for consideration?
We can do that. It's up to council's motion, of course, to answer that question specifically. Mr. Beelan again?
Well, I don't know the amount of the reserves. Are we depleting the reserves too much? That's the other thing, so.
Terry and Kelly, you got an answer on the reserve there if we were to deplete the reserve?
I think Ms. McDonald's gathering that information.
While she's looking it up, I have a question then.
Sure.
Could you just describe again, the coat check area is now being used for storage of the chairs and tables?
Correct.
So can you internally build a wall and put that together without, like within the reserve amounts to do it right now, just to protect that area? I mean, we're talking about the liability of kids climbing on equipment, right? We don't want them to do that because we could be liable for them injuring themselves, but I mean, is that a reasonable thing that internally you could do that?
Unfortunately, I don't think we can. I wish
Okay.
we could, because that by putting up that wall, I need to remove another wall to open that whole space up, because then you wouldn't have access to the coat check. So the wall that's separating the bar from the coat check, if you can kind of picture that,
Yeah.
we need to remove that wall internally to be able to access it. So if I put up a wall, then that whole coat check is kind of isolated. So putting up a wall comes with removing a wall on the other side.
I follow you.
Yeah, unfortunately. I hear what you're saying, and we would have probably just did that, your worship, if that would have been the case, but
Okay, well, do what you can to keep the kids from climbing on there. I
Yeah.
know that's never easy.
there.
Kelly, we'll get to you folks here in a minute. We're in the middle of getting some information. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the time to get that together for you. So what we have is a Creemore Arena Building and Equipment Replacement Reserve that we put $65,000 per year into. So the balance right now is about $654,000. So there is room to do this renovation from the reserve, as long as Terry isn't going shopping for equipment.
Okay, Phyllis, since you've brought this up about whether we put money in or not, we now just told we have 650,000. Now that's for the entire building, right?
For the entire building.
And there's a lot of things in that building that we
Okay,
have to have money to pay
I'm going
for.
to put it back to Terry. Does he foresee anything in the amount of $50,000 that he's going to need those reserves for in the next year or so?
Terry,
That's a good question, Your Worship. There may be. The one that comes to mind is the ice resurfacer.
yes.
Does it get paid out of that reserve, Kelly? Yeah, so that's one that might be coming up in the near future. I mentioned in my presentation that the 10, 11 years are up. We were planning on postponing that one a year. So I would say perhaps in 2026, although the last unit, it took us 18 months to receive. So even though I bring it forward in
Tell me about it.
2026, we may not have to pay for it till 2027. But that's the one that comes up to mind. The other one, and I don't want to, shies me to bring this up, but we also have roof issues at both our arenas. On the arena part, if council recalls, we did a lot of work to the lobby area. We did a lot of work to the dressing rooms in Creemore Arena, but we also know that the arena portions are also leaking. We do go up there and patch it, and there was an assessment done. The amount is strong. It's a lot of money. So those roofs might be coming up in the distant future, and that'll be a significant amount. So there is potential projects in the future, but I don't have a dollar amount, unfortunately. Sorry, I wish I would bring good news. I tend to bring bad news.
Here's what I'd like to do. Between Councillor Deneen and Councillor Beelan, I'd like you to come up with a dollar value that you can amend your motion. And while you two are figuring that out, I'll go to Mr. MacArthur, who's been very patiently waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think we just need to get Terry to go get some real hardcore numbers. This can't be a puzzle piece project. It's one, 20 by 40 space. This project all has to be done at once. It can't be one part here, as far as I'm concerned. But I think it can wait a year. So I think if we just defer this till 2026 and come back with a firm, hard plan, hard dollars, and we'll look at it then.
Okay. Good point. You want to say something too?
Yes, thank you. Can warranty.
Go ahead.
If we're going to defer it a year and we've got the money sitting in reserves, I'm of the opinion we should proceed this year, use the reserves because we're not going to use the money this year that's sitting in reserves. The rate of inflation will more than compensate as far as what we're going to save. And if we've been able to use it out of reserves, then we've saved taxation dollars at this time. So I'll throw that back at Councillor Balin and Deneen.
Okay. I'll let the two of them discuss this for a few minutes more. Have you, or Mr. Walker, do you want to say something?
Just going to say, your worship, earlier that reserves, if it's in the reserves, we should be using the reserves to do this project and get it done. So that part of it is safe and suitable for all that are using the facility.
Fair enough. Okay, go ahead, Phyllis. Counselor Deneen.
And anything that isn't used goes back into reserves anyway.
That's
so
correct.
It's kind of, yeah, take the 50 from reserves if you'll, and keep the line and take the whole 50 from reserves if you're.
50,000 from reserves, good for me.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion before council is moved by Councillor Beelan, seconded by Councillor Deneen. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby fund the kitchen and storage renovations proposed for the Creamer Arena in the amount of $50,000 from the Creamer Building and Equipment Replacement Reserve.
I think it's the Creamore Arena Building Equipment Reserve, but nevertheless, you got the right point. So the 35 is going to be from reserve and it's going to be removed from the 2025 budget. Is that right, Madam Clerk? So we're, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the net effect of the resolution is the entire 50,000 renovation will come from the reserve.
So there's no $35,000 coming from taxation. Correct. Effectively saving $35,000 from taxation for this year. Thank you. I tell you what else it does too, if I can. It also leaves it open to the general manager of the department to decide whether to do this project immediately or reassess the project or whatever. But it's because it's from reserves, he doesn't have to act on it this year. Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's correct, Your Worship. If I may, I also just to Councillor MacArthur's point that he made with
Yes.
respect to one contractor versus various contractors is we know this project would encompass requiring a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. And so sometimes you can go all out one contractor and they end up subbing out to their subs and they make some profit off it. We have historically been our own project manager for these projects where I or our project manager that we now have on staff can do our own work and we can sub out these projects. So that's why we kind of have it as separate entities versus one contractor. We know that amount could be more. So we're just trying to save a bit of dollars with that.
Right. Okay. I think the other point too is it also keeps it within the purchasing bylaw that we have, the procurement bylaw, and allows each of the department heads to act within that. Okay. Anybody got any questions of the motion as it was presented? Do you need it reread? Okay, council, I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And that's a unanimous again. Well done, folks. I keep taking a phone call here and I don't know who it is, but I'm going to just keep sending them to voicemail. Okay, Mr. Beelan, thank you very much for that. Mr. Walker, do you have something else?
Yes, your worship. Motion to install a safety rail on Main Street. And the money would come from 30,000 from a safety reserve. I'll turn it over to Dan to explain that, please. And the safety rail, first of all, I'll need a seconder for that. Motion.
Yeah, of course. Just for clarity, a safety rail where?
On the Main Street, in front of Bessie's Dairy old building, where the sidewalk and the right-hand lane are side by side.
Okay, so when you speak of the Main Street, we have no streets called Main Street. So that would be Stainer downtown.
Stainer downtown. Okay.
Thank you very much. Just to be clear. Seconder is the Deneen. I think, thank you very much. Go ahead and speak to it and then we can go to Dan.
Yes, I've talked to Dan before on this, that the traffic at the lights at Perry Street, the left-hand turn lane and the straight-through lane at the straight-through lane is right adjacent to the sidewalk. And there is no safety barrier there for pedestrians or children versus the vehicles that's on an angle that leans towards the sidewalk anyways, or splash guards for those walking on that sidewalk, and that we need to address that situation. Either that, or we remove the lane and remove the lights and, or leave the lights, but have a one lane only and put parking back. You know, that's another option. But the splash rail or the safety rail, I believe, would be likely the easier to achieve at this point in time. And I talked to Dan, and Dan can explain where the money would come from, and maybe even has some pictures to show.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Mr. Perot.
Thank you, Your Worship, and yes, staff had been looking at this. We did a bit of a safety review with help of RJ Burnside early in 2024, and I failed to include it in my budget presentation last time. But I think our deputy clerk has a few slides, just a couple, that I could go through to show council the location and where. But in essence, the conclusion of that little safety review was that the buffer between the travel portion of the road and the sidewalk is such that potential conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles. So it's next slide will show sort of a schematic or something to the effect that could be installed there, where those darker black railings would be mounted to the curb, bolted to the curb, I should say bolted, and that the gray area is like a steel mesh type of material, which would allow light and some airflow and whatnot, and be placed close enough together that if there were splash or snow that flies up off the plow, those types of things, that there is some sort of semblance of safety. You know, by no means is it going to stop a vehicle from crashing into it and causing, you know, damage if it were to hit it. But so the next slide shows the proposed location. So basically where the white truck is with the sunroof is the stop bar for the signal lights at Perry and Highway 26. So between the two driveways of the white building, that's where it would be proposed. It's about 60 feet. And I would be proposing to use the $30,000 that's in the it has been in the budget for some time for traffic control equipment portion of the budget to install those railings, those barriers.
Mr. Walker, anything else?
No, Your Worship.
Members of council, any questions? Yes, Mr. MacArthur?
Just in regards to Councillor Walker's last comments, I drive through downtown now 4 or 5 times a day for the last 5 years. And without the advanced green in that left turn lane, I've never seen a hold up there of anybody having to turn left in those 5 years, maybe 3, 4 times a year. So I would totally agree to relooking at putting the parking back and just doing away with that left turn lane. Maybe we still need these barriers in certain places, but to me, that just seems like a bit of a white elephant, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. All right. Is there any other questions? Looking around the table, Mr. Beelan? Yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering if a bollard would be better than a fence. They would stop a vehicle. You can get the ones that you have a bar across and down. They're usually concrete filled and they would stop a car from hitting a pedestrian or going up on the sidewalk, sort of like a guardrail type thing, rather than just that fence looked pretty flimsy. It looked like the snow would maybe dent it and maybe bend it over and it would look like crap in no time. And I think people would probably spray paint some words on it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Can't stop that. Thank you, Mr. or Councillor Deneen, please.
I agree with Councillor Beelan. If you got one of those cement-filled plastic coated ones, because I've looked going down First Street in Collingwood, if you look at all the light standards from the sand and from the salt, something a little more resilient rather than metal would be appropriate, I would think. Thanks.
Mr. Walker. Turn your mic back on, sir.
Would that allow, the snow plow, the sidewalk plow, would that give it enough room then to get down and do what it has to do in that, section of sidewalk?
Dan?
Thank you, worship, through you to Councillor Walker. I'd have to take some measurements, you know, going from the curb to the edge of the building. I think there's a step there maybe as well that, you know, we'd have to measure to see how thick a boulevard style barrier would take up. I would suspect that it couldn't be mounted to the curb. It would have to be off the curb and sort of drilled in or dug into the existing sidewalk area. And see what that distance is, because those are about 6 inches or so. Usually those bollards are 6 inches around. One of the concerns also that was raised was also the splashing, snow, slush, rainwater splashing from the vehicles up onto the sidewalk area and onto the building. So that was taken into consideration as well when we looked at sort of those guards, those middle pieces to stop or to try to alleviate some of that splash that come from the road. So perhaps there's a way to manufacture those as well to go in between a larger bollard style. I'm just not sure. We didn't look at that, so I can investigate.
Okay. In regards to the splashing, before we go on, I don't think we should be putting them in with graded or holes of any type. They should be solid so that they can stop water from splashing. Like what you proposed in that drawing, it would have holes and water would go through it, right? So why would you have holes in it? Like,
yeah, thank you, worship. You know, I said there were holes, but they're very maybe not microscopic, but they're very small.
like quarter-inch or
vent
something?
holes, yeah,
Like-
maybe a quarter inch.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not. They wouldn't be anything bigger than, yeah, not even an inch, half inch. It would be
Okay.
very small.
I just didn't think it was going to be like diamond plate or something like that you were talking about.
I think another purpose of them as well, the ones that I've seen or I've looked through, and there's a provincial standard actually for them as well. So an OPS standard, which they're, I think they're meant to be also decorative as well. So
Sure.
to some extent, but that's what I looked into. That was what was kind of recommended, but I can certainly look into something more robust if council wishes.
Well, robust, I think would be a good word considering the type of traffic that we see on that road. Mr. MacArthur talks about his trucks and so on. I'm sure that there's a lot of trucks that go on that street. So, anybody else with any questions or comments? It's an interesting recommendation, Mr. Walker. Yeah. How about we read it? We read the motion?
Thank you, worship. So moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Deneen. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approves adding to the budget the cost for installing safety bollards or a barrier rail in downtown Stayner at the intersection of Highway 26 and Perry Street, with the cost to be funded from the Public Works Traffic Control Equipment budget, and that staff be directed to provide a report to Council outlining the design and materials that the safety bollards are made of before purchase and installation.
Sounds good. Anybody else with any questions? All right, seeing none, I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And are there any, no, everybody is in favor. Thank you. That's great. Another unanimous decision. All right. We've been at this an hour and a half. Does anybody want a bio break or do we just keep going? Just checking. We'll take a time. We're going to be back at 45 minutes to the past the hour. So at 1:45. We'll in recess. Thank you. All right, I think we can get going again. Everyone's back. Thank you for that little bit of a break. Okay, we're continuing on with our discussions here at the council table with our members of council with motions. So I will look to our members if they have any other motions they'd like to bring forward. Mr. Deputy Mayor, thank
Everybody
you.
else had their first.
Looking around.
Everybody said their first go, at least. Have you had a first go?
Ask Kelly for an update.
Kelly, how, go ahead, Your Worship.
On behalf of Mr. MacArthur. Kelly, where are we at?
Thank you,
And give us a
Worship.
net number, please.
So we have now decreased the budget by $255,000 from taxation, giving us a net tax increase of 4.5%.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on. Mr. Deputy Mayor Van Staveren, you have a motion you'd like to bring forward?
Thank you, Your Worship. This motion has been discussed a bit, but be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby remove $100,000 from the Parks and Rec capital budget for the proposed pickleball courts in Creemore. The staff be directed to investigate the use of the Creemore Arena property and facility for pickleball, including the investigating the establishment of a non-for-profit organization to facilitate pickleball.
Pickleball courts, and it's from reserves.
It is actually through the tax stabilization account.
Before I ask for the seconder, can I clarify that? Is that coming from tax stabilization?
Yes, Your Worship, that is.
Okay, so that is actually taxation. Okay, I'll look for a seconder on this motion.
Mr. Walker has it.
Mr. Walker, thank you very much. Paul, go ahead and speak to it if you wish.
Thank you. As an advocate and somebody who has played the sport of pickleball, it's one of the #1 sports in North America, or growing. It's something that's going to be coming more and more into this community, and we see it with within all our communities. We had an ask from a group in Creemore for the construction of a new pad for pickleball, and the cost was $100,000. It would potentially be built behind the Creemore Arena. In the summertime, from about, we'll call it the 1st of April, middle of April, when the Coyotes are done and hockey is done, till the 1st of October, the arena sits empty. And I'm of the opinion is that with very little cost, we could allow development of pickleball in Creemore. We already have people utilizing the hall in Creemore. I've seen them play. I believe it's 3 days a week, Terry, or something like that. It's Monday to Thursday, 5 days a week, correct. It's growing. And I'm not saying my attitude, especially being in tax stabilization, we can get into through the year that we can always still use the money for it. But I'd like the ability to develop this league properly or this organization properly and see what the demand is for the sport. And being allowed to develop inside, it gives them potentially more versatility on bad days to play inside. Some people like playing outdoors. Professional pickleball is indoors for the most part. I think it's something that is going to be coming, and I think it's something we have to deal with. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Other members of council with any questions on this motion as presented? Mr. Beelan?
Now, just a comment, Your Worship. There is a tennis courts that could be made into pickleball courts as well that we have. People play it in the parking lots in Meaford, up against the building, and you just put your portable net on the other side. So there's lots of room to play pickleball. The other thing is, isn't someone building a big facility in Collingwood, an indoor facility that's privately owned and privately run just for pickleball? That may send a lot of our pickleball players there as well.
Okay, that's the first I'd heard of that. I didn't know about that. That's interesting. Okay, other members? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Your worship, to the motion, Deputy Mayor, you had investigate the use of the arena facility. Would you add on there and investigate the use of our tennis courts by staff included in that motion?
I think we will, it wouldn't be a problem to add that. I think the direction given to Mr. Vachon to look at how it would work, anything's possible. But it should be reviewed and before we spend money on it, what do the people want? And basically, we got an arena sitting there. I know we do store some equipment in there in the summer. Pickleball takes very little room, like you can put 2 pickleball courts on a tennis court, so you increase your capacity of usage with people, 8 people to a pickleball court. So I think anything's possible, and it's something that if Mr. Vachon reports back to us, which we're recommending, we could look at using the tennis courts as well.
So your worship, I'd like to add a friendly amendment, if may, that to add the investigation of using our tennis courts by staff as well as the use of the indoor arena.
Friendly?
No problem.
Okay, it's friendly. Madam Clerk, you can put that in there. Any other members of council who have questions in the motion? Yes, Mr. MacArthur first, then Mr. Broderick.
Yeah, I believe it's Barry, Councillor Beal, and I heard that some private guy's building a huge facility. I thought it was Barry, but anyway. Yeah, as we all know, it's a very up and coming sport for seniors, and hopefully maybe we can make a council team sometime if there's ever a
Oh,
league
boy.
started, eh? So yeah, and trying to do the
I'll take
budget
pictures.
cuts, I agree with the motion, but Terry, if we can staff the arena for a short-term fix for the next couple of summers or whatever, do you need a little bit of money, 5 or 10 grand for a student or for staffing purposes?
Question, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a very good question, and it's a bigger question to answer than today. As you know, we do have a unionized staff, so we would have to work with the Human Resource Department and the union to figure that out. Who does that kind of work? Is it full-time work? Is it seasonal work? Is it students? Because students are no longer part of the union, so that needs to be kind of flushed out with the Human Resource Department. So from a dollar perspective, yes, right now we do not put anybody in the facility over the course of the summer. Even the winter pickleball people that use the hall do not use the hall in the summertime. It just gets used over the course of the winter because our maintenance staff are outside cutting grass. So right now the facility isn't being manned. We can explore this option as per Deputy Mayor's suggestion. Find out how much it costs. Councillor MacArthur put 5 or 10,000. I don't know that number yet. I'd have to look into that and find out first of all, who would do it, and then of course how much it would cost, because there's a difference in cost between students and and our regular staff. So I have to find out first who does that work.
Members of council. Oh, geez, Mr. Broderick is next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Terry, I've got a couple questions. First, how many pickleball courts would fit in the arena? And secondly, could we staff the arena with a volunteer or volunteer organization?
That's a good question, Terry.
First question, how many pickleball courts? If we were to use the entire arena floor, we probably can, my best guess, I would say you can double up to 12 to 14 courts, probably, if we were to use the entire floor. And then the second question was, can we use volunteers? Again, it's a hard question to answer. Again, I'd have to work with the Human Resource Department to flush that out. If it's just a matter of being in the building, perhaps, there's a whole cleaning aspect of it as well that we have to be cognizant. We have to use our staff to clean the facility. Washrooms are obviously going to get used. That has to get cleaned by our staff. So some portions maybe, and some portions probably not.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, Paul, you're up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to push part of that answer you gave there, Terry, to, in my original request was possibly looking at a not-for-profit organization, and I have spoken in different parameters, but if I could ask the CAO to speak about it a bit, potentially he has some background in some of this potential organization.
Mr. CAO, your former recreation hat.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So it's very common for recreation clubs, sporting clubs to become not-for-profits. They then deal with their own insurance, for example, for participants, and they can also purchase insurance to partner with the municipality because that's a policy that we already have. If we're allowing a group to use our facilities, there would be an agreement to do so. Whether or not that they could be the person at the door doing cleaning, I'm not sure about cleaning. I think that the union probably would not permit that to happen. They might allow, agree to having volunteers, open and close the facility perhaps under an arrangement with the municipality. But I think all of it is something that should be investigated, and it's good for those organizations to understand how they're protected under a not-for-profit system. And it would help them as well. And the whole goal is to help those groups help themselves. So I would suggest with this that we put a little bit of administrative support. If you remember with the cyber gnomes, we help them with their insurance and we help them form their not-for-profit. In fairness, when you're moving groups in that direction, we should look to support them doing that part. It's a small amount of money, might be $5,000 to $6,000 to get them rolling. And then ultimately they do more to help themselves once they're organized. And that's the community development piece that we'd like to see happen with a lot of groups in our community. Help them help themselves is really the goal behind it.
All right. Paul, do you have something else?
No, it hit on me too, with the CEO speaking about economic development. It's one more thing that we could be leaning on. It's creating a new organization within a community. So it is a good point from a strategic point of view. Thank you.
Members of council, anything further? We'll get to Terry in a second. Members? Terry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just two other points that I want to make sure council is aware of. And this sounds like there's probably going to be a future report that will be brought forward to council to kind of flush this out. But two other concerns that I have. One is, as you know, we were approached by some group of folks in Creemore that we're willing to create an association, which is fantastic. One thing that they were kind of hoping for by us building new courts would be that it would be free for them to use at no charge, the outdoor courts. And so if we were to pivot a little bit to provide an indoor facility, the question will become, do they have to pay to use that facility? And as you know, we charge everyone to use that facility. So something that council has to be cognizant of the fact that if we were to move this indoors, council may have to explore, do we charge them or do we don't? The second point that I wanted to bring forward is working with these volunteers is, and knowing the industry a little bit, is that for some reason, the indoors of arenas are not favorable for pickleball for whatever reason. A lot of folks are trying them out. And I don't know if it's the stuffiness, I don't know if it's the heat from the sun, I don't know what it is, but there's something that is turning pickleballers off from inside the arena. I think it kind of makes sense. It protects them from the environment and they can practically play every day, even if it's raining outside. But for some reason, we haven't had this experience ourselves, but I know, talking to some colleagues in the industry, that for some reason, the indoor isn't working for them. And that's why they're kind of migrating to share use with tennis courts. That seems to be more preferred with the pickleballers than actually an indoor facility. So with that being said, this is just a small group of people that have approached us. There's a lot of potential pickleballers in Creemore. Maybe the indoor would be conducive for other folks. I'm just not sure if the group that approached us, if they're willing to go indoors or not. So I just want council to be aware of that. We'll have to flush these things out with these people once we get to it.
All
Thank
right.
you, Your Worship.
Any other members? Yes, Mr. Beelan?
Apparently in Collingwood, they could only fit 6 pickleball courts on an ice surface. So I don't know if it's the way they laid it out or whatever, but you might not be able to fit 10. If anybody ever knew anyone that played lacrosse, the inside of an arena can really stink like that. Maybe that's why they don't like it. I don't know. But anyways, just my comments there.
Don't talk to us about the environmental controls and value that we'd have to install to create a comfortable environment like that. Okay, I have a question for Terry. Excuse me. About the current indoor facilities that are used in the Creemore Community Center Hall. Those were established 2 years ago, perhaps, just after we did the floor. Yeah, by the way, that floor is terrific. That was a really great investment. I think that we made a really we hit it off really well with that. That's a good floor in that facility. So can you give us an idea of the users and or the activity, and then frankly, is it being well used? As a pickleball facility, is it being used?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, it's started off, it was being used 3 times a week. I think it was 3 years ago.
3 years ago?
Yeah, and then it was 3 times a week. Now it's being used 5 days a week. They start at 9 a.m. and they finish at about 2 or 3 p.m.
Wow.
I also know, again, it's a bit of a small group of people. They get approached daily by folks that want to join their group. And there's a lot of folks that unfortunately there's not enough court time. There's only one pickleball court in that hall. So there's a lot of people that are approaching them, and unfortunately they're stuck saying, well, no, we're maxed out. And so they've grown to their capacity at this point.
Okay. So the users group that use this, I guess they're sort of an ad hoc group or a club that's basically forming. Excuse me. Are they currently paying a fee to use the facility to do that?
Yes, they are, Your Worship. Yeah, it's a nominal fee. I think it's like $30 every 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a fee that was established 3 years ago, but they do pay to use the indoor facility. So yeah, very good point. If you're going to give it, you may have to. We do have a floor usage fee, an existing fee in our fee bylaw
Right.
to rent the arena floor. I don't know off the top of my head. That would be the fee that we would use if folks were to use the floor, unless council wanted to waive those fees.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm more interested actually in the current facility that we have in the hall area. And so the last point, I heard you mention that it is not available in the summer months because our crews are not in the building or not available in the building. So I'm trying to put together here that from what the CIO was saying about how we can make arrangements with volunteer groups to have access. Is it feasible for someone to use the facilities there, but not have access to the greater hall or the greater arena space? Like, can we lock that door that it accesses to the arena space and just have the access where the washrooms are and that little cloakroom that we were talking about? Is that possible?
It is, Your Worship.
All
Yes.
right.
We can
So
isolate both.
We could create an agreement to have that used through the summer months as well as in the winter months then, without having to have the responsibility of having a staff person full-time through our HR discussions with union, et cetera. We could do that.
So, sorry, Your Worship, if I understand your question correctly, yes, we can segregate the two areas to keep folks isolated to a certain area.
Yep.
Put, locking doors, keeping doors shut, only opening up certain doors, that could be done. I don't have an answer yet with respect to the staffing.
I get it. Okay.
I have to work with.
That's a little premature. I
yeah.
get it. All right. So I look at it that to the deputy mayor that, if we can move towards the community development piece where we can have a users group using the facility through the summer. They could use that facility if they need to in the summer. We can investigate the use of the tennis courts, which is probably the best option, honestly, is to investigate that and work out that agreement with the current tennis court users. I understand there's a group there, a small club that runs it as well. So we need to have a better look at this. And so I appreciate your motion coming forward at this time. If there's nothing further from members, yes, do you want to say something else, Paul?
I think we've had a good discussion on the intent of my motion. And if we proceed with the direction that we look at all corners and then proceed with the money being in tax stabilization, we can take it out throughout the year if we need to. So I'm not saying it, we know we have that a budgeted item. Terry could come back and say, hey, this isn't going to work. So I don't know now. I'd like to leave the motion in some form, but I just like some direction as far as should we take the money right out of the budget right now.
All right. So fundamentally, you're asking to just stop the withdrawal from the tax stabilization reserve, which stops the project at this point, asking staff to do some direction on investigating other options that are available.
Correct.
Okay, so that leaves it open for a discussion for the indoor space that we currently operate, the outdoor space at the tennis courts, okay, and or perhaps even the parking lot that was mentioned earlier. So, Mr. Walker?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Terry, what shape is the parking lot in?
Thank you, Your Worship. For pickleball use,
Yeah.
like it's in pretty good shape. Is it good enough for pickleball use? There is some portions that may be able to be used. We have to, again, be cognizant of the fact of fire routes and that kind of stuff. The pavement is pretty good.
Because my thought would be to rent that interlocking fencing and create 2 or 3 outdoor courts right in the parking lot. If we have an area that is suitable for that facility, it's a fixed for everybody. It's
Yeah.
outdoors. And the cost of the fencing certainly is not anywhere near the price of a cement pad. So just a thought when we're looking forward at looking at all options. I think that should be an option that we should certainly look at as well.
Okay, Terry?
Yeah, we can explore that as part of the flushing out all the items. I just wanted to let council know, we did not determine it being a cement pad yet. The cement pad idea is because if you want to use it multi-use for an outdoor rink. But there's a lot of pickleball pads that are not necessarily cement. But we also know that there is some digging and some materials that has to be brought in. So we're not stuck on the cement pad as of our other projects that we've been talking about both in Stainer and in McKean Park. Those were cement pad proposals because there was the idea about putting outdoor rinks on them.
Okay. We can park the idea of an outdoor rink at this time then, and we'll just halt on that, and we'll continue to talk about pickleball specifically. Anything else? All right. Madam Clerk, would you read the motion with all of the little twists and turns that it has developed?
Thank you, Worship. So the motion before council is moved by Deputy Mayor Van Staveren, seconded by Councillor Walker. And be it resolved that council, the Township of Clearview, hereby remove $100,000 from the Parks and Recreation capital budget for the proposed pickleball courts in Creemore, and that staff be directed to investigate and bring a report back to council for the use of the Creemore Arena property and facility and the Creemore tennis courts at Gowan Park for pickleball, including investigating the establishment of a not-for-profit organization to facilitate pickleball.
Can I just ask, I think that should say something about tax stabilization reserve, because that 100,000 is not currently in direct taxation. So it's $100,000 reserve from tax stabilization. Is that correct? That's your intention?
So at the beginning where it says from the Parks and Recreation capital budget, I can say being funded from the tax stabilization reserve.
Yeah, okay. Everybody clear on that? All right. All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you for the clarity, everybody. There's a motion in front of you. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? Another unanimous decision. Thank you very much, folks. All right. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We're going to look down the table. Is there other motions that people wish to bring forward? Looking both directions. Anything, gentlemen? Okay, we'll look back over this way. Mr. Beelan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to move that we remove $5,000 from the small halls budget and that the small halls do not support the Purple Hills Festival.
Okay, so you said the small halls. You're talking about the small hall festival budget?
Yes,
Okay.
we've obviously got $5,000.
We have to be clear, we have a couple of things called small halls in our budget. So
Okay, so the
Small Hall
Small
Festival.
Halls Festival budget that donated $5,000 to the Purple Hills Festival. When the Purple Hills actually applied for their own grant from the government and got more than Clearview did. So why are they're double dipping as far as I'm concerned, and
Okay.
there's a
Let's
lot
get
of
a
reasons.
seconder for a minute. I hear what you're saying. Ms. Deneen, thank you very much. Carry on.
So, Clearview apparently gave them $5,000 towards their festival. When they applied to the government, the Ontario government themselves got more than Clearview did. And here, to me, it's like double dipping. Clearview got no recognition as being a sponsor of them. To me, it's a waste of money and something we shouldn't be doing. So if we lower the Small Halls Festival budget by $5,000, there's no $5,000 to give to the Purple Hills Festival, and we save $5,000 on our taxation.
Fair enough. Okay, we've got a mover and a seconder. Members of council, any questions? Questions or comments? While they're contemplating, Mr. Vachon, would you like to comment about this? I know our Amanda Murray is not with us here today, our manager, but perhaps you could speak on her behalf. How do you feel this would impact the Small Hall Festival?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if it'll have an impact on the Small Halls Festival. This was just an addition to the Small Halls series that was being provided. The Small Halls Festival would still move forward without that support being provided to Purple Hills. We do also, there is 5,000 that gets provided in cash. There's also some indirect marketing that we also do for Purple Hills as part of the overall Small Halls Festival marketing. I'm assuming that's something that we can continue to do. So there is still an element of support there. We're still supporting some of the marketing. They're part of our advertising. They're part of our tourism guide, which doesn't cost, which doesn't give them money. You know what I mean? They're part of our program. So that can continue to happen. But I don't think it'll have an impact on the Small Halls Festival per se.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other members of council with any questions to Mr. Beelan's motion? Giving you guys time because you seem to be looking at paperwork over here. So any questions, guys? All right. Do you have a motion there, Madam Clerk? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and read what Marty had said.
Thank you, Worships. The motion on the floor is moved by Councillor Beelan, seconded by Councillor Deneen. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby remove $5,000 from the Small Halls Festival 2025 budget that is earmarked to support the Purple Hills Society Arts Festival, and that Council direct staff not to financially support the Purple Hills Arts Society Festival for 2025.
All right. Any further questions? I am prepared to call the motion if everyone's ready. Council, you have a motion. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? No. He's going to abstain. Thank you. All right. That carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Looking around the table, are there other motions from other members? Mr. Beelan again, since nobody else has jumped in. Thank you very much, Councillor Beelan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to remove another $5,000 from the, and I'm not sure if it's Small Halls or what it is, for next year, not this year. Winterama gets $5,000 from, actually they get $15,000 from Clearview, $5,000 of which goes to fireworks, and I'm not sure fireworks actually makes or breaks Winterama. We never had it in the old days. A lot of people don't like the fireworks. This is the 50th anniversary, and I know they've already got, it's in February, they've already got their plans made. I think they've already booked the pyrotechnics guy or whatever. So I don't want to remove it from this year's budget, but I want to send a message out for next year that we should look at removing $5,000 from the budget that we give to Winterama for fireworks. I think it's a waste of money.
All right. I will look for a seconder, even though I let you go on a little longer than I would have normally. Is there a seconder on the motion? Mr. MacArthur is the seconder. Thank you. Anything else you want to say to that motion? Nope. Nope. Okay. Thank you very much. Questions or comments from the council? Council, questions or comments? I'm going to step in first then. I actually disagree with you. I think that fireworks make a tremendous impact on the Winterama. The Winterama event with the Burning of the Green event. First of all, Friday night you have a fantastic spaghetti event put on by the local firefighters and the Legion. And then you go down to the park and there's the Burning of the Green event, which is a terrific event, also run by our local firefighters, and I appreciate them. And then there's a fireworks show to sort of wrap up the evening. And I believe generally there's an event back at the Legion. Sometimes it's a dance, sometimes it's a comedy show. Irregardless if something goes on afterwards on Friday night, but I don't generally make that one myself. I actually like the fireworks at the New Lowell event myself. That's how I feel, Mr. Beelan. Is there any other members of council with any questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can understand where Mr. Beelan is coming from. I think by not removing it from this year's budget, but giving them the message that we will potentially be looking at removing it from other years, it gives them the opportunity to potentially find private sponsors to get it forward. I mean, I don't know when you traditionally will use fireworks. I mean, we can say Canada Day, people seem to like to light up the skies, and that's great. But it's something that as a taxpayer, we have to watch what we're doing, and it's, I respect Marty's motion, both from this year and for going forward, but I think it could send a signal that we need them to find some sponsorship for that particular event.
Couldn't agree more. Sponsorship for any of our events would be very welcome, and we have great sponsorship happening across our township already, and we're very grateful to the corporate sponsors that help out. Mr. Broderick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, a lot of the concerns with fireworks have to do with animal welfare and the impact of the sound. I'm just curious if the pyrotechnics or can be done without the sound. Yeah, that type of thing. I don't know.
I guess it can.
Would it have the same impact? Yeah.
I don't know. Councillor Deneen.
I think in lieu of fireworks, someone's once done a drone show with laser lights, and it was quite well received as well. I think it was out over the bay in Collingwood, but that's
dependent.
yeah,
Yes.
very well.
Yeah.
Fireworks quite a bit are too, and they'd have a special event license that would allow them to have fireworks other than July 1st? Is that how that works?
It's a festival that's sanctioned by the township, so it qualifies for an exemption from any specific bylaw. Yeah. That's sort of how they get around it. Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, we're quite used to the booming and banging from baseboard, and so the noise isn't as big a problem as other places.
Yeah, I suppose you are at that part of the community for sure. Yeah. Any other members? I appreciate your motion, Marty. I do. I appreciate it. Any other members? Okay, if there's nothing further, you have a motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the motion before council, moved by Councillor Beelan, seconded by Councillor MacArthur, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby removes $5,000 from the budget that funds the fireworks for the 2026 Winterama Festival.
And again, just for clarity, that's important that we do that now because they book it for February 2025. So, okay. Members of council, anything further? All right, council, I'm prepared to call the motion. Those in favor? Oh, those opposed? That is going to carry then. Thank you. That was another close one. Thank you very much, Mr. Beelan. That carries. All right, members of council, are there any other motions that you'd like to bring forward? Yes, Mr. MacArthur.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for road construction, the center line build, spread over 25, 26. 1.4 million is coming out of taxation in 25. If we could reduce that by 500,000 and just make the design work to the money we have.
Just looking for that. Is there a seconder on the motion? Seconder on the, yes, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Yeah, it's on the first page. That's why I was looking on the second page. Fair enough. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a bit of a discussion there at one of the other budget meetings, and I drive that road fairly often. I think, yeah, it's definitely in need of some repair. Now, Dan has informed me that it is a 2-year project and maybe isn't, or was never gonna get the whole stretch completed in 1 year, but I'm thinking the design can maybe be rolled back a wee bit and concentrate more on just the road surface and whatnot and the culverts, make sure the road base is in good shape and the banks and whatnot can maybe be tendered to in future years if the erosion problems persist or get more, I guess, as time goes on. He has pointed out there is a couple of problem areas right now, but I don't think we need to do it all in one fell swoop.
All right, so before we go to questions, if I can, Mr. Perot, would you like to comment on this, on how this could be impacted if the council was to move with this?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll lean toward the treasurer as well, but my understanding that the Public Works capital roads, bridges budget for this portion is to increase by about 300,000 to be put into this portion of the project. So by splitting the project up, it's a $4.7 million overall budget. And it was already split for the over the 2 years. So split it, say I can't recall, like about $2.5 million each. But Kelly may be able to elaborate on how it was funded or what the increase to the overall portion of. I think it was about $300,000. So if council wanted to sort of divide that 300,000 in half, then we could work with our existing capital budget, add 150 to see where we would get for 2025. That's correct.
I'll go to Kelly first. I see that we've got a friendly coming from the director over here, but I'll wait for Kelly first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, Director Perot is correct. We have got that funded with an additional 355,000 to the Public Works capital budget. It is spread out over 2 years. So right now, it's 1.4 million each year from taxation. The balance of the funding each year would be coming from our OCIF grants as well as our gas tax grants. So that's why we've done it over the 2 years, and that would encompass it. And it is approximately the 2.5 per year. Again, if council would like to extend that sort of construction period over to a 3-year period and reduce the 1.4 million, that would certainly lower the tax effect.
Well, I tell you what, I would not want to extend a construction period over 3 years. I mean, we're not Eglinton Avenue in Toronto, right? We're not doing a 10-year project here. So I think it's the type of project should be done in 1 or 2 years. That's just my sort of thought when you said to extend it. I'll leave it to council. Members of council, do you have any questions on the motion? Yes, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I'm going to agree with your comment. We're not Eglinton. On the same hand, for the regular users of that road, for 2 years, they're going to be in a construction situation. And we've seen already what happened on Sunnydale Street for the users. I question whether, if we're going to do it in 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just kind of with some of the information that Director Perot said and Director McDonald said. So the motion is, be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby reduce the 2025 road construction budget for the Centerline Road project funded from blank by $150,000. Is that the idea, or 500? You said 500.
I said 500, but I guess it misunderstood that we're really only putting 150 per year.
Okay.
So.
And what portion is that being funded by, so that I could include that?
So there's actually an additional 355,000 this year being added into the budget to fund that portion of the road from taxation. The total budget from taxation for that road project is $1.4 million.
And that's over 2 years, or that's each year?
Through your worship to Councillor MacArthur, that would be each year. So this year, we would be spending 1.4 million in taxation. Next year, we would be spending an additional 1.4 million from taxation, as well as the gas tax community benefit fund and the Ontario OCIF funding for each year.
Yeah, so if we can reduce still by the 500,000 Or let's make it 250,000 per year, 500 for the total project. Is that
So
too
a reduction
confusing?
of 250,000 in the 25 and 250,000 in the 26 budget. You got that, Madam Clerk? And so you'll be able to fund this from OCIF as well as the road reserve? Is that, you're gonna be able to fund it, Dan? Or are you gonna be sitting in a situation you don't have the funding to do the project?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess through the tender process will tell us, right? Like, just my initial thoughts were maybe we take another look at the design. And then tender and come back to council. It's really, with the knowledge that when we already had the discussion about splitting it over 2 years, so somewhere in the vicinity of you know, the 6th concession in and around there, that would be somewhat halfway. We'd pick a logical spot to sort of end 2025 and pick it back up in 2026. Councillor Beelan previously brought up, you know, that the most northern portion, the piece between the 6th and the 7th, may not require as much construction or much work to reestablish it as a viable road. So we, you know, it may even reduce itself for the second phase. I'm proposing to do the southern portion in 2025, the more needed portion. So again, you know, the last 2 years, fortunately, we've seen tenders come in quite a bit under budget. So, you know, we've seen that as well. So, you know, it's a hard question to answer
is.
because we just don't know what the tender prices are going to be for 2025, but we can certainly have another look and sort of focus in, narrow down some of the requirements that we have there now.
I think, I'll get you in a minute there, Counselor. I think the good news is that when we do get a budget, or sorry, when we do get a tender that comes in and we end up spending less, that any of those savings of taxes that we've already put aside go directly back into the tax stabilization reserve and or the road construction reserve. And so I'm unsure as to how we handle the road construction projects when they come in under budget. So maybe through you or through the treasurer, are they already directed into the road reserve or do they go to tax stabilization automatically? Figured that would be over here too.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any underages like that would be going straight to the tax stabilization
Yes.
reserve. There is no road construction reserve. It's more of an equipment replacement.
Okay, so that's what I thought too. So, okay, so that gives us an opportunity then to put it in the hands of our tendering and see how we can do. And anything that we get surplus, if we end up in surplus mode, we can put it back in tax stabilization. And that allows us to make decisions in the future. So given that this is a 2-year request, I think what we could do is council, we can look at this request and we can accept it. And then next year at the budget, we can take a look at how the tender went and what type of reserves there. Maybe we can push some more money from tax stabilization in 26 to help support that project. Does that make sense? Mr. Walker?
Your worship, why don't we just take the 250 from this year and leave the 250 in for next year at this point in time? And let's see how the tender process works. And then maybe we can alter that next year at this time. I think we just take the 1 year out of this year and leave the balance in. And then let's see where the tender process goes.
Mr. MacArthur?
Or we can leave it in and just alter it next year 2 of one or 6 of one, half dozen of the other, is it not?
It is.
So,
There's a lot of unknowns when you try to make this type of decision. And you know, the best thing to do when you're making decisions at a council table is to have all the information available to you. We don't have it all, but we can set a budget that then gives direction to the staff to execute what we wish them to do. So I'm supportive of what Mr. Walker's saying. I'm going to go to Ms. Deneen first, though.
The questions you asked of Kelly were exactly what I was
Good.
wondering. So thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Well done.
Darned old reserve questions.
Darned old reserve questions. Yeah, darned old reserves. You want to say something else?
yeah, so, yeah, we're working on 2025 budget. So if we want to amend it to 250 just for 25 and go from there, I'm happy with that.
All right. She's asking for the friendly on that. That's good. Before you go, Mr. B, this other guy, Johnny, did you have something? Okay. All right. Mr. Beelan, go ahead.
I'm still a little confused. The whole project costs $4.7 million, correct?
I believe that's correct. Is that 4.7? Yeah.
So why are we putting in 1.4 this year and another 1.4 next year? We've got 800,000 in grants, 2.5 from reserves. That adds up to 4.7. So are we putting another 1.4 next year back into reserves, or I don't understand the whole thing.
Kelly and Dan, can you explain that?
Thank you, Worship. Through your worship to Councillor Beelan. So the amount that's currently being shown from reserves isn't actually coming out of reserves. It will be coming out of the future OCIF and gas tax funding. But in order to show the funding for the entire project, it was labeled reserve funding. Does that make sense?
So how much do we have to put from taxation in next year? Another 1.4? Because that adds up to 2.8 over 2 years.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Broderick, I wasn't sure. Were you signaling? No? Okay. How about you read that out for us and see if we can get even more confused?
Thank you. Moved by Councillor MacArthur, seconded by Deputy Mayor Van Stavern. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby reduce the road construction budget for the Centerline Road project funded from taxation by $250,000 for 2025.
There you go. That's pretty straightforward. You've removed the 26 discussion. All right. Nothing further. Dan, are you comfortable with that? You'll be able to work within that recommendation?
Yes, your worship, and you know, as we have and always do, is once we have reviewed the works and have a tender ready, we'll tender it and obviously come back to council for,
Of course.
for what it's come in as tender and for the part one, for phase one.
Right. Okay. All right. Good luck. Members of council, you've got a motion in front of you with a mover and seconder. I am prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And those opposed? Thank you. That's due noted. That does carry. Thank you very much, Mr. MacArthur. Again, around the floor. Anybody else with any other motions? Yes, Mr. Beelan.
Thank you, worship. I'd like to move that we remove the trail constructions project from the budget. It's $30,000. I feel that with the trail from the railroad line, we already have additional trails, and I'm not sure we need this trail expansion or construction.
Okay, is there a seconder on the floor? Okay, Mr. MacArthur is going to second that. Thank you. Anything else you want to say there, Mr. Beelan?
If Terry wants to, he can expand again on, I'm just not fully understanding how we need more trails or whatever when there's already more trails available for people.
Okay, Mr. Vashon, why don't you take a minute and explain what $30,000 for trails is proposed in your budget?
Yes, thank you, your worship. And yes, Councillor Billin is, through you to Councillor Billin, and he is correct. When I made my presentation a couple of weeks ago, I had at that time kind of forgotten what trail we wanted to do. So since then, we went back with my team. And so historically, these funds were used as matching dollars with the Simcoe County's Connecting Communities Trails program that they have.
Yep.
And every year we historically always applied for funding through them. And every year since I've been here, we've always been successful getting money from them. And so me and my team, mainly Mrs. Murray, does a phenomenal job in her applications, for these trails. The trail that we had identified for this year was to build a trail west of Avening, attaching the community of Avening to Crothers Park. So there's been an ongoing concern and issue of the public accessing Crothers Park from Avening in that corner. Don't know if I don't know the name of those streets by heart, but there's a bit of an old opening there, and there's some old picketed wooden stakes and some buried signs. And so, and there's been a lot of concerns brought forward with respect to people parking in that corner. Folks that are traveling through, they go on their Google Maps and they're told that there's a washroom there somewhere. So what we wanted to propose this year was to build a trail from the middle of Avening back towards the wooded area, down towards Crothers Park, to help alleviate some of the traffic that's going on in that corner in Avening, as well as providing the residents of Avening access to the park. They still want to use those trails. They still want to have access to Crothers Park to walk their dogs, etc. So we're proposing, I wanted to build an addition of a trail there and applying through to Simcoe County to get 50% matching dollars. I apologize, I didn't have this information at my presentation.
That's okay.
But since then, I recall this question brought forward by Councillor Beelan, a really good question. And I wanted to provide that information today. Yeah, so there is a picture there. If you can kind of go down a bit, Mrs. Clerk. No, the other way. Sorry, the other way, the community of Avening. Keep on going right there on the corner of, what's those two streets? I can't read them from here. Yeah, Robertson and, okay, yeah. So that corner there, so that the gentleman that lives at that residence has been writing to me probably on every second week with respect to the concern. So there's a traffic jam that happens in that corner because folks are led to believe through the apps that there's access to the washroom, which that park houses a porta potty. Again, I guess folks are, when they park there, they're upset at the fact that it's a porta potty. Again, their apps are letting them believe that there's an actual public washroom there. The resident that lives there has witnessed folks actually going to the washroom on the side of the street, unfortunately. So what we're proposing is, if Mrs. Clerk, if you can again just move down a bit, if you can get one more shot. No, the other way. Keep on going. Sorry. Yeah, up. I apologize. Keep on going. Keep on going. Keep on going. Right there. So what's the name of that street? Crothers. So the proposed plan would be to build a trail at the end of Crothers Street through the wooded area to where you see that opening. That's an old trail that used to be used back in the day when Crothers Park was owned by the NVCA. So we're proposing building a trail from Crothers Park heading south towards Crothers Park. So if folks want to park on the side of that street, Robertson Street, they can, and then they could walk the trail. We don't want to remove access from the residents of Avening. We're told that a lot of folks there use that trail, and they want access to the park. So we're proposing putting a trail through there, and like a bona fide 3-meter wide trail, full accessibility to provide access to Crothers Park. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Members of council, do you have any questions to either the mover or the seconder? And I'll start with Mr. MacArthur.
Yeah, so Terry, you're basically taking the parking from in front of one residence and putting it in front of another. So do you think you're just moving your problem?
Thank you, Your Worship. We are kind of moving the problem, but we're taking it away from a corner. According to the person that lives in that corner, it jams up, and then you got actual traffic that wants to get through, and they're kind of weaving away around the corner there. So putting it in a longer sight line may help alleviate that. But yes, there still would be potentially some parking issues, but at least not in the corner. So it's the lesser of the two evils, I suppose.
And further to that, then why can't, like, they can access the park through the summer. It's open through the summer, is it not? The main gate?
It is.
So could we just put up signage directing them back to going the main gate?
Through your worship, we can, there is signage right now. I guess folks through their maps software, through their Google Maps and stuff, they're just not picking up the proper entrance to that park. They're missing that entrance and they're keeping going, and then they're heading into the community of Avening. And so we can perhaps try to put signage the other way, but we can try that. I just, the trail it's multi-use. We're hoping to be able to alleviate some of the traffic, but it's also to provide proper bona fide access to Crothers for the folks that live in Avening as well. And it has dual purpose.
Okay. Other members? Just look up Mr. Beelan first and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, I'm wondering what we get for the $30,000. Do we put down a gravel path or do we just spread rose petals, or what do we get for the 30,000? Like what does the trail look like before and
We
after?
cut down the
What's difference?
thistles.
Yeah.
What we do, right? We cut down.
Sure.
Well, I've seen Deer Mick Trail just by walking on it. They don't have anything special, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So is it a gravel path or?
Yes. Yes, through your worship. Yes, Clearview Township actually has standards for trail development. There's an actual engineered standard. That's the standard that would be created for that trail. It's, like I said, 3 meters wide. It's lime screenings that gets used. We have a lot of examples of other trails that we've done in the past. One that comes up to mind is the trail that was built at the end of Mill Street in Creemore. There was a trail that was built there to connect Mill Street to through Mad River Park there. So it's the trails that get developed are as per the Clearview standards.
Do we know how many kilometers this is or how many feet or?
Not the top of my head, but I can get you that in a few minutes. Or my colleague.
Because I'm just wondering, it doesn't seem like that long of a trail. Would that use up $30,000 or?
Through your worship, it may or may not. We would not spend more than, well, obviously it would be 60 if we were to get matching dollars from the county. It'd be $60,000. Be up to that. We would not spend more than that, obviously. But if it's only like, say, the trail only costs us 20,000, then we would put in our 10, and the county would put in their 10, and then the 20,000 would get put into the tax stabilization because we wouldn't spend it. Yeah. But it's an up to 30 on behalf of the township, 60 on behalf of the project.
Okay.
I think Ms. Can has the, yep. About 130 meters.
130 meters. Okay.
400
Potentially up to $60,000.
up to.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some trail. But like you said, it could only cost 10. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. As most of you are aware, the last year and this year again, the NVCA has done some remediation work in that park. And they wish to go further. We got a major problem with erosion. The farmer next door is losing a fair bit of land. My proposal or my ask in what they're doing, because it's a multi-year project, is that eventually we can put a trail between Creemore and the Crothers Park. Eventually, a nice walking trail, but we have to, there's a lot of ifs and balls in the air that have to be answered, and everybody participating, who can do what and where. If I was in the Crothers Park last year and I was rather disappointed in the condition of that park, and Marty, I don't disagree with you that it's not going to cost $60,000 to put a little trail in. The question I have, Terry, for you is, can that money be used to fix up the parking lot in the park?
I don't think so. Sorry, I should say, through your worship, sorry, it's been a long day. Through you to Deputy Mayor, anything's possible as per council's direction.
Well, the other
for
thing,
the department to do it on their own, no, but if council puts through direction to do that, we could.
I think there's more to that park that it's a diamond in the rough. It was beautiful, obviously, at one time. There's a lot of the bollards are rotten. There's a lot of stuff there that you know, trees that need to come down. There's some evidence of emerald ash borer been eaten away there at some of those trees. And I mean, obviously that can't be used in that money, but if we are ever going to consider a path, you know, heading towards Creemore, I mean, I won't say we can start it, but that would be a good potential to start. So I think it's important that we take that attitude that eventually, you know, we're having spot development in Avening, some infill lots and stuff like that. So there's more people living there or will be living there too. So anyways, those are just my comments.
Well, we're hearing that there's actually traffic jams in Avening, so the whole community's growing. Like all communities are growing, so. Who else has something? I got hands here. I got Deneen. Go ahead, Councillor Deneen.
Just for the interim, could there not be a sign put on the end of that road saying no access to park? Just a thought. And
Terry?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've been asked that question in the past. We've decided not to put that sign up because it also deters the folks from Avening from accessing the park. So we do kind of want to say that for the public that's driving through, but we don't want to say that for the residents. So we haven't been able to distinguish between the both. We would like to, but then the residents, so that's why we want to build this trail. Then we would put up signs that says, and we would let the grass grow there, and we would remove that as a bona fide entrance, and hopefully the folks would use the trail. We have decided not to put up those signs, but if council wants us to, we surely would.
All right, Mr. MacArthur?
Yeah, as Terry reminded us, if we can get dollar for dollar out of the county, then I think like we have to try for something anyway. He says we've been successful, you know, in past years, so.
We sure have,
If you can
yes.
get supposedly free money, I don't know money's free, but that's another aspect of this.
All right, anybody else? My final question actually is to Terry. The Carruthers Park washrooms, they're not operated in the winter months, are they?
No, through Your Worship, to Your Worship. No, we just put a porta potty there in the summertime, and
That's all it
it
is.
gets removed for the winter.
Yeah. At one time, there was a sort of a little cement building there, but I don't think we use that anymore.
No.
It's all locked up.
Yes,
But-
and it's going to be torn down.
It's going to get torn down?
Yeah, there's a lot of health and safety concerns with that,
Okay.
that building.
So that's
that
another
shed.
project altogether. But in the
Yes.
meantime, porta potties are the type of facility that would be put back there.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. And that's just operated in your regular operating budget every year? Because we have a lot of porta potties, I guess, across the township, don't we? We do. All right. Members of council, if there's nothing further, can I have the clerk read the motion?
Thank you, Worship. Moved by Councillor Beelan, seconded by Councillor MacArthur. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby remove the trail construction project from the 2025 budget in the amount of $30,000.
All right. So the motion is to remove this money from the budget. Members of council, you've got the motion. I'm prepared to call the motion. Those in favor? Are there any opposed? So that motion does fail, but thank you very much. All right. Is there any other motions from other members? Looking around the room. I know you are, and I appreciate that because I did ask for one at a time, but I thank you. Mr. Beelan, please go right ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I feel that we're spending too much money on fluff. I think when times are tough, you kind of take away the luxuries away first. And I've noticed at some events that we have, and I'm not sure which budget this comes out of, obviously tourism or Parks and Rec or something. Everywhere you go, you have somebody singing or entertaining or playing an instrument. For example, at the Tulip Festival, there were Tulip Days. There's a person singing, and I thought, well, people didn't come to hear the singer. They came for the Tulip Festival. It was nice, but do we really need that? Is it necessary to have that much entertainment at these events like Market and Parket or whatever? And I was on the impression that we spend about well over $20,000 on these entertainers. Maybe we could reduce it by $10,000 so that we cut back on it. And some people think it's a waste. I think
Okay,
it's,
so we're trying to get to a motion here.
yeah, so I'm trying to take $10,000 out of our, and I'm not sure which budget. Is it Parks and Rec? That,
We'll get that clarified in a minute.
okay, out of the
Alright.
budget so that we can't spend it on excess entertainment.
Can I ask for a seconder? Is there a seconder somewhere on the floor here on this? Yes, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Now, before we go on, Terry, what budget does the entertainment come out of?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The bulk of the funding comes from the tourism and events budget. They have like a bulk amount. Top of my head, I think it's 48,000, maybe 42 now, because I think we removed 5,000. So it's part of a bulk amount. It's part of a plan that Miss Murray puts together every year regarding supporting the events. I don't know the amounts of these entertainers off the top of my head, unfortunately, but it's part of an overall blanket amount that we use over the course of the year.
Okay,
It's probably the 615 account, Cal.
perhaps Kelly, if I can give you a minute to kind of dig out some information about that. And I'll come back to you on a question about how much we spend either in 2023, or if you have 2024 numbers, it would be good to know what we spend on that type of thing. Other members of council with questions? Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Just to, supporting Mr. Beal on bringing the motion to the floor. The concern I had, and I saw it, I love the music market and park it. It's a signature event of ours, but we saw the addition of a second set of entertainers last year. And this is one of the items that, before we see the band, the star attraction come through, I like to socialize. I like to go around and see the different vendors. And this is a situation where it may be getting to be a little too much. I don't know if we're paying these, I won't say the understudies or not, but I think it's something that we have to look at when, the comment made about fluff. I think that's one area where we could be overspending on.
All right. First of all, they are professional musicians that we're hired. And I believe every musician who performs in our township gets paid somehow, some way, some fund. I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody does it for free.
Mike Ron.
Mike Ron might be the only one. God bless Mike Ron. Tell you what. Tell you what. Yeah, we do. Terry, do you have something you want to say?
Just while Kelly's perhaps trying to gather, it's the 615-655 account, Kel. I just got note that we spent approximately 2,600 on the entertainment for the music market and market itself. Just that music market, 2,600 for entertainers.
2,600.
Just on music market and park it for the musician that's in the little tent. Is that correct, Terry?
Yes, correct.
Let's all recall too that the music that is on the gazebo stage is entirely run by the Kinsman Club. It was at one time run by the Chamber of Commerce as a partnership, and they received some funding. The funding dried up. The Kinsman Club stepped up. They have since gone out, good for them, and found some sponsorship to help them run their event. The very first year that happened, we at the township stepped up and supported it the first year. But since that point, it's always been supported by the sponsors. And I believe McPherson Homes is one of them. And I think 2 years ago, it was CBJ. I think it was 2 years ago. I think it was that company. So there were a couple of different companies that have supported it over the years. But right now, the music that's performed in the stage, the main stage, is run by the Kinsman Club. With one exception, and that was the 10th anniversary event with the Spoons. The township did pay some of the money to help with the Spoons concert. However, that was the 10th anniversary kickoff event, and so there was a shared arrangement between the Kinsman and the town on that. That's what I understand. I don't know what the value was, so. Okay, questions? More questions about this? Kelly, do you have any information you want to share? So we can get some actual accounts and things that we're talking about?
Thank you, Worship. So there are two potential accounts. This may came up, possibly three. I'm not sure exactly. So there's advertising and promotion in the programming budget of $30,000. There's a community and special events line that's $51,000. And then there's a miscellaneous that's 21,000. So within those three numbers, and just to give council an idea, there was a busker at the Winterama, and that was $2,000. So it looks like that's sort of the range per performer.
Yeah. It's in that $500 to $2,000 range, depending upon the type of act. Right. Okay. Does that help with anybody's thought processes on this request? All right. Anybody else got any questions on the request? Because we don't really actually have a clear motion yet, do we? Are we okay, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Worship. So the motion before council has been moved by Councillor Beelan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Van Staveren. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby remove from the 2025 budget $10,000 from the tourism, advertising and promotion budget, community and special events budget, and the miscellaneous budget for musical entertainment. I'm going to use the word combined so that it doesn't look like we're taking 10,000 from each of those.
Okay. Mr. Walker, I saw your hand go up.
Hey, Your Worship, I was just going to say that for the amount that's costing us for the music market and parket entertainers in the tent, and it's worth every penny that we pay for that entertainment in that tent. It's pre-music, pre-hand for those that are walking the market. There are people that sit and stand and watch that music. It gives entertainers an opportunity to showcase themselves, make themselves known, and for that $3,000, I can't see taking that away for that purpose only in that market, as well as the music that happens in the gazebo.
All right. Okay. Other members? Other members? No? Mr. Beelan, do you have anything else you want to wrap up with there?
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't add it back next year, but times are tough. This is a tough budget and it's hard for people to swallow, even where we're at. And I think we're probably close to 4%. It's still a big increase for some people. And when they see money being wasted, I think, you know, they kind of get angry about it. So I don't think this is a necessity. I think it's nice to have it. I think there's some people that when they go to the market and park it, they don't want all that noise. They want to be able to socialize and talk too. So I'm not, yeah, there's some benefit for some, but it hurts others, I think. So I don't think we need to spend it this year.
Okay. All right. Before I go on to ask for the motion, between Terry and Kelly, you're understanding the intent of the motion as far as what the clerk has indicated, $10,000 from a shared account. So we have a concern about the music. So that's understood on how we can manage that. Yes, Terry, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship, I just have some more numbers to share. Sorry, to your question.
Sure.
I understand. We totally understand. Just some more, some numbers for you to consider. So as I said, there's 2,600 for the music part of the farmers market. There's approximately 1,500 for the Creemore's farmers market.
Yes.
There's also 3,000 that gets spent for the trail tunes in partnership with Wasaga Beach and Collingwood. So that may have an impact on that event, that partnership. Also, we spent approximately 1,500 on other miscellaneous musical events such as the Tulip Days and other smaller events. So 10,000 would probably eliminate the music on all those events.
Okay. It could impact all of those events.
If 10,000 is the number that's being proposed, music, the numbers that I've just proposed, Your Worship, is approximately 10,000.
Yeah.
That would properly spend. So if we were to remove the 10,000, it would be removing the entertainment portion of all those events.
All right. Thank
Could
you
I
very
amend
much.
that to
Mr.
lower?
Beelan,
Could I amend that and look to lower it to 5,000?
you can do that. You're the mover. 5,000? Okay. Seconder, you okay with that?
Yes, but just to clarify what, this is not necessarily from the music budget. This could be from advertising budget or whatever the easiest way to get this, some of the savings is what you're saying. Okay.
All right. Members of council, anything further? Yes, Mr. Broderick.
Just a point of view. I consider music a form of joy, and I can't support reducing joy in Clearview Township. So,
Thank you, sir. Members of council, anything else? All right. I think we batted this around. Members of council, we have a motion. Do you want to read it again? Because to clarify the 5,000?
Thank you, worship. So it's be it resolved that council of the township of Clearview hereby remove from the 2025 budget $5,000 combined for musical entertainment that is funded from the tourism advertising and promotion budget, community and special events budget, and the miscellaneous budget.
Okay. Members of council, you've heard the motion. I am prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And those opposed? Okay. Apparently that motion will carry then. Thank you. You have a point? Yes?
I was under the impression that we did not say it was strictly for music. I thought we would give them the choice of where to reduce it.
Well, it was for music, as I clarified with the treasurer that it would be music related.
Entertainment related or music related?
I think the word was music. Is that what you said?
Musical entertainment.
Not advertising.
It just could be funded from that line item.
Do you want to change the motion?
I think the motion should be that the budget be reduced at the discretion of the Parks and Rec to find the savings of $5,000. And if they chose not to do it in the music, then they can do it in advertising, if they can do it in other ways.
Madam Clerk, what would you like to do here? How do we get out of this? Before you speak, I would like to say that we haven't passed the confirmatory bylaw here at this council meeting. And because we have not passed the confirmatory bylaw, we can change any motions we've already made. Go ahead.
It's really up to you as the chair how you would like to proceed. You can ask for a revote and then a friendly amendment or an actual amendment, and go from there.
We can ask for a friendly amendment or an amendment. What's your call? Mr. Beelan, I'm looking at you. You made the motion. You saw the results of the voting so far.
Friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment?
Yep.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can you edit the friendly amendment in? And we're going to do a revote.
Thank you, worship. So the motion would now read, be it resolved that council of the township of Clearview hereby remove from the 2025 budget $5,000 for items at the discretion of the Parks and Recreation Department that is funded from the tourism advertising and promotion budget, community and special events budget, and the miscellaneous budget.
Are we comfortable with that? We're comfortable with that?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Council, you've got the motion in front of you. I'm prepared to call the motion for the second time. All those in favor? And those opposed? Remains carried. Thank you. All right. Anything else, anybody? Okay, Mr. Beelan, you got anything else? You're good. Thank you very much for bringing forward all those. And thanks. Oh, we got some more? You got one?
I have a question.
Sure.
And I'm not sure. In the regards to the Creemore Medical Center, can I be explained? Do we run that, the building? I know we own it.
We sure do.
So I saw in the, and this is a question, I'm not making a motion or anything, that they had $27,000 in wages, salary and wages to run the building. Is that our expense?
Yeah, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, worship. I can assist with the treasurer. So that might be wages related to Parks and Recreation, but we lease out those office spaces to the different doctors. So it's a lease agreement. The doctors look after wages for any of their staff or employees at the facility. They just pay the township for their lease amount monthly. I don't believe there's anything earmarked in the Parks and Recreation budget for anybody to do maintenance facility review.
So just to explain what it says in the budget, it says we're budgeting this year, 2024, our budget was 82,000. Last year was, or this year is 84,000. But we have salary and expenses of 40,000 plus contracted services plus facility maintenance. So what is the 40,000 in salary and wages for that facility?
Okay, that's straight over to the treasurer and the CAO. What would it be? Madam Treasurer.
Through your worship to the Deputy Mayor's Tavern. That's actually the administration function of the medical center. That's not wages. So there's various facility maintenance. We have contractors that do that. But the medical center itself is self-funding. So there are no funds from Clearview Township going towards the medical center. It's the lease revenue comes in, we manage the facility, whether it's inside maintenance or outside maintenance or anything else having to do with the facility. I can get you an actual breakdown of
it's-
what that administration line is, but it most certainly is not salaries.
Well, and that's, find it odd because it does have facility maintenance. It does have insurance, and I start to question when we have other medical practitioners in our community that own their own facility, but there's an administration line there, item. Salaries, wages, and benefits for the administration of that building.
I see it as $40,300 for the
Right.
2025 budget. Is that correct?
If you'll give me a minute, I will bring it up and I will let you know.
Sure, no problem. Take a second.
Yeah, administration. Yeah, it's under the administration, sorry. So I guess the question is, where's the money going to from an administration?
Sorry about that. My mic's not on. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, Kelly, do you have that? So on the spreadsheet, it says administration, but then on this sheet, it says salaries, wages, benefits.
Worship?
Yes, Terry.
Sorry, I had my hand up. I didn't have my card. I could, as Mrs. McDonald's looking for that information, I know where we spend the money for the expenses at the Creemore Medical Center. It should not be under wages and benefits, but we have contractors that work for us there. So we have a contractor who removes the snow for us in the wintertime. We have a contractor that takes care of the flower bed in the front of the building. We have a contractor that does janitor services to the common areas of the facility. And before, we used to have a maintenance contractor that used to maintain the facility for us. That contract was terminated in April, and we have since brought those services in-house. So part of that budget may be for that contractor.
No, it's got on their lines, facility maintenance and contracted services already in the budgets. I'm starting to wonder if what you say is true, are we going to start making money off the Creemore Medical Building?
Kelly.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Deputy Mayor Van Stavern. Just looking at the detailed line items for that, there's 15,000 for property taxes for the building under that line item. There's 12,850 funding for debt principal for the expansion of the building, and then 11,450 for the debt interest. So all of those make up that 40,000 administration fee. There are no salaries, there are no benefits, there's no apportionment of any of the contracted services in there. That's just strictly that category. So the loan interest, the loan principal, and the property taxes for the building.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so I think Kelly, we just need to take a look at this when we prepare the budget, what we actually put in that line, right? So that there's no misunderstanding. Is that helpful?
Absolutely, Your Worship. I'll have to look closely at the line that you're speaking of, because on the one I'm looking at, it just says administration. So it may have been a copy paste in error.
It could have been a copy paste for sure. You know, it makes sense because unfortunately this salaries, wages, benefits administration does show up in a lot of the printouts from this category. right here, right? Okay. Mr. Deputy Mayor, does that help you answer your question?
Yes, it does, and it explains, we knew we had, it went to a zero budget as far as that goes.
Yeah.
That repayment, I question it as a capital, as an expense, but anyways, it's the numbers that work, so thank you.
All right. And just a clarification there, through Mr. Vachon, is it the recreation staff that now look after that facility and beautification team? Is that right?
Yeah, it's our supervisor of maintenance that takes care of that. Our new supervisor of maintenance.
Yeah.
He's kind of the boots on the ground person for that facility.
Okay.
And we just didn't renew the contract with the contractor that used to take care of it
Right.
on our behalf. We were able to do that in-house, save a little bit of money.
Good news. Thank you. All right. Any other questions from other members? Other members? Kelly, you're okay? Yes. Hello there. Hi.
Hi, Your
Tammy
Worship.
Gill would like to join us. Hello, Tammy.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to offer a point of clarification. So our supervisor in recreation helps coordinate the maintenance contracts of that building. So the HVAC, the things that our staff are not able to do for us.
Right. So we have to hire a contractor, gas fitters, that type of stuff who do that type of
Exactly.
work.
Yes, thank you.
Understood. Okay. Right on. Okay. Other members with anything else? Okay. I've got a few questions that I'd like to pose. These are just questions. I don't have any specific motions. Let me put on my other glasses. First of all, I'd like to talk to our public works staff. Last year at this time, we had a good conversation here in this house in regards to a bus stop. We also had a discussion about garbage. And I wanted to have a conversation again at this time because it was not in the 2024 budget, but I know Dan and I had a conversation in my office just this morning. So Mr. Perot, can you help me understand how our transit service is going to be evolving over the next little while? And will we be able to provide a bus stop, proper shelter out here in front of this building? And will there be a garbage facility out there so that we can frankly have a spot for people to deposit their empty coffee cups instead of leaving them all over the parking lot?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think I mentioned briefly during my budget presentation that it is my plan to have a wholesome look at our transit service in 2025. Knowing that we're getting some facilities in the east part of Stayner, the new grocery, the new retirement or seniors village. So it is something that I'll work on doing that piece of it as far as trying to get a plan to move forward with potentially expanding our service or changing our service to be able to expand it into those areas. The discussion was to I believe to investigate that, and I certainly did, and help with the Lynx Transit that we can certainly work with them if council chooses to work with them in providing a bus shelter. That location is specifically pointed out is only a Lynx Transit stop. It's not a Clearview Transit stop. So I can, again, if council wishes, give direction to staff to investigate that with the county Lynx Transit system, then I could certainly move that forward in 2025 as well.
Okay. Can I ask then if you're looking at changes to the Clearview Transit system, would you consider a change of location of the bus stop for the administration center in Perry Street to make it conclusive or connected to the actual Lynx bus stop? And then we could in fact have a bus shelter that serves the purpose to keep people out of the weather instead of actually being asked to put up two bus shelters, one on one side of the building and one on the other for no reason. Can we do that? Can we have the bus routing for Clearview Transit meet up with our Lynx bus?
Through your worship, yes, certainly can look at that. That was also top of my list as far as potential change to locations of bus stops for the Clearview bus. As council may know, that our our transit bus and the Lynx transit bus both go to Wasaga Beach 5 days a week.
Yep.
Not 7 days a week, but 5 days a week. The two buses go parallel one another, different times, of course, but that would also be an efficiency that we might look at as well is during the weekdays that Clearview Transit riders are dropped here at the transfer station, perhaps let's call it. They can transfer onto the Lynx bus in order to go to Wasaga Beach for 5 days a week, and then you know, if the Lynx bus does not change or their system doesn't change in 2025, we can continue the weekend service to Wasaga Beach through our Clearview transit system. So those are all the things that we're looking at, but certainly we wouldn't recommend to put two shelters and in a very close proximity.
Yeah.
And make it efficient to have it a shared shelter system.
It just makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
So do you require a motion of this council to support you in this, or is this something that you're comfortable with the responsibilities of handling the transit system right now and the potential changes that you're already proposing? Do you need a motion of council to support you in that, or do you comfortable doing what you need to do now, and you're prepared to report back to council on any changes you want to bring?
I think through your worship, I think that's fair. You know, those will be the things that we look at, and we can make those decisions, those discussions, and report back to council with any changes to any of our transit system.
Okay.
And bring it as a fulsome review and direct. Maybe at that time we look for direction to move forward. We'll do that
Yeah, for
early
sure.
in the new year. But again, working with Lynx or with the county, we can come back with a
100%.
full report.
So the county of Simcoe, through our county budget discussions, we are looking at expanding the link system in the county. We're looking at adding another whole route actually through the New Tecumseh area to help support things that are happening in the south end of the county. But what a great opportunity it would be for us to speak to them about some changes to the way the links services this side of West Simcoe, we'll call it, between Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, and Clearview Township. And so I look forward to you working with them. And I know that they're interested in hearing about it too, because we're kind of a unique area over here in the county in the fact that we have Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, Clearview having all of our own transit systems. Lynx comes in there as well, so that's the county. And the town of Blue Mountains has a bus service that actually goes from town of Blue Mountains into Collingwood and goes to their Collingwood terminal and back again. And so they actually have a cross-county bus and a fourth municipality that's involved. So transit is becoming a little more complicated. And in fact, Collingwood hired a transit supervisor for themselves. They actually have a transit staff person who does all that. I know that this is putting a lot on your table right now, so I'm wondering if you could look around your staff and see if there's somebody who's going to become a transit person, or whether you're going to bring that forward to us in 2026.
Thank you, Your Worship, and approved in the 2024 budget was an operations technologist. And
Yes.
so my vision for that portion of that role would be to look at some of these transit systems as well. So,
okay. On the transit topic, I know Councillor Janine wants to bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. And that is conversations have been had with the councillors of the town of Collingwood. Particularly, I had a meeting with the Mayor Hamlin, and had a conversation with her about the need for a Collingwood transit bus service to serve Nottawa as a result of so many people from the Nottawa area who are employed in Collingwood, and the lack of the ACE cab service when it failed or when it stopped operation. People just don't have an opportunity to get to work. And so we need that bus service. And so Collingwood is negotiating it at this hour in their own budget discussions. One of their counselors have called me about this very issue, and I want to make sure that it's discussed here at this table, that you have funding and ability, and your intention is to work with Collingwood to help solve this sort of problem that we have between Ottawa, Collingwood, for residents to move back and forth. So do you need any support from council in your current budget to move that forward? I mean, I can bring a motion, but I'm asking if you are comfortable with these type of directions that are being given right now.
Thank you, Worship. And your conversation with the mayor of Collingwood probably sparked a call that I received yesterday from their manager of public works. And unless something changes at Collingwood, as far as moving forward in 2025, I cannot foresee that. But what I've been told is that they are looking at adding an additional route, a whole additional route with buses, new buses in 2026, late 2025 or 2026. So while there's nothing set in stone right now, I most likely would have to come back to council if things moved quicker in Collingwood. But it is on everybody's radar, I believe, Collingwood's and ours, that if they do add a southern route to service their newer developments that are happening along the north side of Poplar Side Road,
Okay.
that we would ask Collingwood to drop a bus down into Ottawa and see how much that costs and come back to Collingwood,
Right.
or come back to council.
Right. So obviously there'd be some type of cost involved in that type of arrangement. And are you comfortable with your budgets as proposed right now to be able to handle that? Or do you need an addition? I know it's a really big unknown at this
Yeah.
time, but I'm asking, are you comfortable with where we are with our budgets in order to handle that? And perhaps through Kelly, do we have reserves available for transit operations that can support that?
Right. I may have to look to the treasurer. I know we have a pretty healthy reserve as it comes to the capital replacement of vehicles or transit vehicles. As far as the operation perspective, I know we did save a little bit of money when we entered into the tri-party agreement a couple of years ago
Yep,
with
we did.
Collingwood and Wasaga Beach. However, on top of that, we also started the specialized transit system that we operate with the tri-party agreement as well. So where we sit with operation, again, I have to take a closer look, but I think from knowing what we're spending and what's in the budget now in that category, I think we're pretty healthy.
Okay.
Again, it depends on how much Collingwood would charge us to
Sure.
bring a bus down into Ottawa, but again, it's.
I appreciate it's an unknown number, and that was part of the question that was brought to me by their counselor that contacted me about that very thing, because I don't even have a clue what it would cost, but we need to get that sorted out. If I can just turn to Kelly, do you have any information, Kelly, about the reserves for our transit operation and whether they could handle that, mid-season discussion of whether we did an expansion in Ottawa for Ottawa Collingwood?
Thank you, Your Worship. There is, so the transit funding is the provincial gas
Sure it
tax
is,
versus
yeah.
the federal gas tax. There is an opportunity to use some of that for operations. So in conjunction with the Director of Public Works, I think it would be best if we sat down together and figured out, okay, what is this and where would it fit in that funding category? They have expanded it outside of just the purchase of buses, but there's still certain categories they will and will not allow you to use that funding for. We do have a fairly hefty budget right now. It's sitting at around $600,000 for the provincial gas tax. So there is potential.
Okay. Please.
And I might add as well, Your Worship, that a few times a year, excuse me, I'll see an email come across my desk on expansion of transit systems and whatnot, that there's funding opportunities out there. So I'll pay closer attention, or maybe do some investigation early on here
Sure.
to see what those funding opportunities might be on expansion of transit systems. I know that's a big push at the provincial level as well.
Sounds great. All right. before I get off this topic, because I've got two other things. Is there anything else from members? Phyllis Deneen, Councilor Deneen, go ahead.
Yeah. Um, Dan, we've talked about this about 3 years running now, a bus coming from Collingwood to Nottawa, or the Lynx bus. And we were waiting on their master transportation plan to be done, and it's been done for 2 years now already.
Yeah, I think so.
I think, yeah. I just want to make sure that everybody's cognizant that Nottawa does want the bus running back and forth to Collingwood. And anything we can do would be greatly appreciated. Thanks. Yes, we will definitely hear.
All right, just so we know, we've got to release our clerk. She's got to run off to another meeting. So our deputy clerk is continuing to carry the meeting. Thank you very much. Good luck. I've got some more issues. Do you have any questions on busing? No, I'm not. No, she's got something else to do first. So, is there anybody else? Okay, so I want to move away from busing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Look forward to a report on busing and coming to council in session sometime soon. Okay. Moving down the table, Amy Can. Amy, I was still not sure why this $23,000 is, you put an ask in there for contracted services in the planning department, when I don't actually see a specific project that you feel that we're going to be activating in 2025. So give me an opportunity to hear why we got to keep that $23,000 in of your budget. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. As I stated in my presentation at the opening of budget, this is not specific project money. This is money attributed to how we process Planning Act applications and helping us sort of address complex problems as we go. So you're absolutely correct. It's not attributed to a specific project, an internal township project. The fund is designed as a sort of contingency to help us in our day-to-day work and to make sure that we can answer complex questions. Having said all this, we do have an existing fund that we've requested to carry forward in and around that 22,000 mark for that consulting services. So certainly if it's the wish of council to see that increase be drawn back at this time, we're in your hands on that.
Okay, I appreciate your honesty and understanding on that. As Councillor Beelan said, this is a very difficult budget, so we need to do what we can to try to reduce our budget expense. So for a moment's time, I'd like to transfer the chair to the deputy mayor for a moment.
Thank you, Your Worship. You wish to make a motion,
I do have a motion I'd like to bring forward, and that is to reduce the taxation expenditure in the planning department for contracted services by $23,000 from the proposed budget.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Beelan? Okay, does anybody wish to speak to that motion?
I think you've heard some of my comments already, so.
I think you've spoken. Does anybody wish to speak to it on this side? Could I have Deputy Clerk, could you read us the motion, please, so everybody has a clear understanding again?
Yes, and hopefully I've captured it accurately. So moved by Deputy Mayor Van Staveren and seconded by Councillor Beelan. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview reduce the 2025 budget for contracted services under the Planning Department by $23,000.
I think you should have it, the move by the Mayor, Doug Measures,
Yes, sorry.
and second by Councillor Beelan. Thank you. Okay. If there's no further discussion, I would like to call that motion. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. I'll pass the chair back to Your Worship.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Thank you, Amy, for your understanding on that. Okay, I'd like to go to the last topic I want to bring up. I don't have a specific budget discussion here, but I want to talk about our processes in receiving information. As I mentioned earlier, it's really important for councillors to have good information in front of them before we go ahead and start making decisions. And so one of the areas that has come up a couple times in our conversations, both at the table and in the hallways, is we don't know how a budget gets spent once we give a large amount. And so without picking on anybody specifically, through the CAO, I'd like to just point out and ask Mr. Vachon, can you give us an understanding on how we can receive a report that outlines expenditures on any one of our projects or signature events that's held, so that this council has an understanding on what actually gets spent? Earlier, we just found out, like you said, $2,600 was spent on music at Music Market and Parking. That number had never appeared in anywhere that we had access to. So how is it that we can receive that information and have a better understanding when we walk into a budget, knowing what we're spending on each of our projects that we work on? And this frankly can go for a public works, it can go for, you know, IT department, everything, but I'm just going to pick on you because we talked about it earlier. So Terry, how difficult would it be to create a report so members of council can see the success or failures of any of our events moving forward?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Not difficult at all. We can definitely create reports and bring back information for council. Not a problem. I think we have historically done a small halls report once the season's done, once we wrap it up and all the bills have been paid. Usually the small halls festival itself gets a presentation. Perhaps we can add more information to my presentation that I do. Like I usually bring in my team members from my department specifically, and perhaps we can, bring forward more information for council. And we're always open to bringing more reports to council to explain specific events and how much we receive in revenues and how much we spend.
Okay.
From our department, Your Worship, not a problem.
All right. So through the CAO and to the treasurer, is this something, Mr. CAO, that we can sort of incorporate as a policy or something we can look at between the senior management team and how they communicate with council on how we actually spend? Like, I'm not trying to nickel dime take us right down to the penny, which perhaps we could, but I'm thinking that we should have a better understanding on what gets spent in what areas instead of just saying project.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this discussion can lead to a process that we could follow. So if there are areas that you think council needs more information on, if you could bring those forward to us, maybe we could select a couple of meetings a year, maybe 3 or 4, to go through that specific topic. Is there an area that you would like more information on? Then it would give us a chance to create those reports. We could write reports on almost every one, right? But at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're writing the reports that you want to hear about and not just generating for the sake of generating. I think if we did something like that we scheduled a meeting, quarterly throughout the year to go over something like that, then that's something that we could prepare.
All right. Kelly, would you be able to help us understand how we would, benefit by receiving this type of information? I mean, honestly, there's a lot of information, and there's a lot of information. I know that you and your team work on the details and bring this forward. For a councillor and for a mayor, deputy mayor, we have to look at all this information and then be able to discuss that with our members of the public as well. And so hope you can appreciate what I'm saying. You know, the discussion earlier about what's in administration, well, we don't really know. And then what's in the small hall festival, we give $70,000. Well, what did you spend it on? So we know where it went. Does that help, Kelly? Like, how can we do that?
Absolutely, Your Worship. The big problem from the finance side, and I know in my previous role here,
Yes.
I would create monthly financial statements for council, and you'd receive them approximately 2 months late, because by the time you have all that information in and you have it entered into the system, you get it onto an agenda, you get it in front of council, it doesn't really matter anymore because you've now gone from spring to summer. I think the best route is to find out what the key pieces are that you want to see. Do you want to see a quarterly report or an annual report on the small hall festivals or the specific operations of the halls? If you want to see financial reports, again, I'm more than happy to recreate them again. Keep in mind the information you get will be approximately 2 months late.
Okay. I would suggest that when we're talking about budgets, which is where we are today, that council needs to have an understanding about, you know, where this all gets spent. So when we look at our 23s and then our 24s, and then we look at our projected 25s, we should know. And if you consider some of the motions that Mr. Beelan brought forward here today, some of those are pretty small amounts. But we need to have an understanding about why that's important to the whole township and why that's part of our function. And so I think that future budgets need to have those type of reports available to us as part of the budget package. Whether they be part of your presentations as senior managers, or whether they simply just be, you know, stuff like this that we can then take a look at and review it. And I'm not sure if I need to see it all year long, because to be honest, I'm very happy to work with each of you, and this council is too, to hear from you as you report at each of our meetings. But I'm more concerned about how we look at the budgets and try to actually find the savings, or try to find things that we're expending excessively, and then maybe we can come up with some ideas. So I'm suggesting the budget process. When we get to this point, we should have a better understanding about where we're actually spending our monies. Okay? Mr. MacArthur.
Yeah, can I just add to that, Mr. Mayor? One thing I've always wondered, like in road projects or building projects, is how much engineering costs are. So like, sure, we see the tender for the actual project, but we don't know how much engineering costs have went into that previous,
Yeah.
or how much staff time. That might be a little harder to break down, obviously. But now I've lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay.
Your last,
It's a long
what
day.
was your last comment again?
I'm more concerned about where we are when we
Yeah,
receive
so that's-
budget
yeah.
information. We get
So
even
even
this
if,
great package right
like,
here.
small
and then we
halls
get-
you use for an
Then we get
example.
this, but
We
then there's
use-
one budget line and it
Yeah.
doesn't tell me what all that means.
Yeah, so even though like small halls probably wouldn't have a wrap up, I don't know whether you'd have a wrap up now, Terry, that you could use this year, but even if we had what was spent last year, just
Yeah.
as a guideline.
Sure.
So once the project's completed, if then we could get the breakdown of all the numbers, whether it's a year old or not, just the most recent but complete information.
Is that helpful, everybody?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Unless I just maybe.
And just to echo a bit, and from a financial background, it's very difficult to make a decision when we don't have a completed budget. And what I mean by that, until we have year end, December 30th,
Yeah.
we will not have completed budgets for small halls or anything else. We get best guesstimates. And, you know, we saw happen today, I'm questioning, you know, the line item, for instance, it was thrown into when GL. And it's really difficult when we're trying to get it done this time of year. And I almost wonder going forward where we should have these discussions this time of year, but not finalize anything until February or March. And the reason is it's not fair to our staff to try and give us numbers that aren't there yet. You know, we want to look at budgets, the critical one for us, we're not looking at the administration, for the most part, the administration expenses. We're looking at our projects, the halls, the builds, what we want to do for the next year, when we don't even know what we spent this year. So I don't know, Kelly, if it would be ever something that you know, we always want to get stuff done sooner, but the truth is, are we really doing ourselves any favor? And, you know, we play with reserves. We can talk about that all day long. What's the proper use of reserves and proper use of capital funds? And it's challenging to make decisions when we don't have the numbers. So anyways, just a real
I
thought.
agree. Thank you. Anybody else with any quick comments? And then we'll go to Kelly. No, okay, go ahead. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Worship. Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Van Staveren. The main reason we try and get the budget sort of pulled together now is based on tender pricing. If we leave it too late and we do a budget approval in March, any of the managers that are tendering these larger projects can't go to tender until they've gotten the okay from council to go ahead. So now your tender doesn't go out until April or May, and the contractors that you're hoping to attract with maybe local better pricing, things like that, their schedules are already booked. And correct me if I'm wrong, Director Perot, but that's the main reason I try and get everything done sort of as soon as possible in the new year.
In talking with members of Simcoe County, there are communities that do not do their budgets until the new year.
There are, yeah.
And so I just look at it, okay, you've identified a problem or potential problem. What can we do? Or, how do we revisit it? Or do we final approvals? How do we amend it so that we work with final numbers? And, we have, as Marty said today about the fluff, we don't know where it is because we don't have final numbers.
Yeah.
So anyways,
I
just.
think the
little
other
comment.
challenge there too is, we're only one tier of the government and we do rely on a great deal of support from the provincial government. Our OCIF number, it never comes in exactly what we budgeted. It's always a little bit different. Could be a couple $1,000s difference, but it is always different. It's not exactly. Certainly gas tax money does always change every year. It's in that general same area, but it's never exact. So I get what you're saying, Paul. And the reality is that we have to be a continually motion business here. Like we're continually moving. And so we have to be prepared to, move on best practices and move on reserves and move on having that ability to keep the operation moving. We can't just stop, set a new budget and start again. It's unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Well, and it is a live document, so we always like the budget, so it should be a live document and always working.
It is, yeah.
But how do we deal with it as a council when we've made a mistake or when we've made too much of a grant or made too much of a spend? We want to give our staff the ability to, go and get the best deal you can, but on the same hand, here we are 9 months later trying to recoup our mistakes or deal with our mistakes, so.
Well, the beauty is, of course, is the policy is that we can always put things in a reserve. And I'm going to look at our friends in the fire department because he hasn't said a word today, but I'm just going to point it out that a few years ago, we put money aside to do a renovation on the Nottawa Fire Station number 6. And we put tax dollars into it and we can't build it because the money that we put aside was not nearly enough based on the RFPs that went out to build it. But that money didn't disappear. That money just went straight into that reserve. So it's sitting there waiting. When we try to activate that project again, we'll have those funds available to us to move on them. So they don't ever disappear. We put that money aside, whether we halt the project or not. If we, as you said, make a mistake, our mistake in that case was not anticipating, the construction price index going up like it did crazy. And so, one day we're going to hear from the chief saying he's going to reactivate that project. And he has already got some funding in it. So now we can bump it up and build the whole thing. So it is a living document, like you said. My question here, just to come back to what I was trying to say is, how does council make good decisions not knowing how the little things are spent? We can't decide. So I'm hoping that we get a little better reporting ahead of time before we come into this budget process again. So I'm comfortable with what we've done this so far. I'm just looking at what I've learned more and more every year when I look at these budgets. I need to know more information. So that's where I'm hoping through the CAO that we can see a better reporting system to get us the information that helps councillors make decisions. Is that okay? Thank you, everybody. If there's nothing further on this item in our council budget, nobody else has anything else, no other further motions. All right, we will go to a public meeting one day soon, scheduled through the clerk's office, and we'll hear from the public, and then we'll have that opportunity to make some changes there too. Yes, go ahead.
So drum roll, please. What's the final?
I was gonna get to that. I was
Okay.
Madam Clerk, or sorry, Mr. Broderick, go ahead.
I just wanted to just say something in support of what Kelly, the point Kelly brought up, and I just want to say be careful what you ask for. Of the municipalities that I'm aware of that set their budgets in the new year, too often it seems that they're wind up in a deficit position as far as planning.
It's true.
I know a few municipalities in the neighborhood that are in that position. I don't want us to be there.
Thank you very much for that comment. All right. Ms. McDonald, our treasurer, can you give us a number, please, where we are as a net tax increase?
I most certainly can, Your Worship. Our net tax increase is currently 3.68%.
Thank you very much for that. All right. Thank you very much, Council. Good work today. Council, we're going to move on to the most important item for today's meeting, which actually is called the confirmatory bylaw. Because as I stated earlier, once you pass the confirmatory, you can't change anything else. So before I bring that forward, anybody else? Last chance? Okay, we're good. Confirmatory bylaw, recommendation be it resolved, bylaw 2486 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the December 4th, 2024 council meeting be presented about a first, second, and third time finally passed on the 4th day of December 2024. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Mr. Walker, thank you. Any questions? You've got the bylaw, all in favor? Confirmatory bylaw carries unanimous. Motion to adjourn. What is it, 3:48? We're going to call it 3:48. It's been a good afternoon, folks. Be it resolved that we adjourn this meeting, Mr. Broderick and Ms. Deneen. Thank you very much at 3:48 PM. Thank you, everybody. Have a terrific afternoon.